Hello, hello. We should have all done that, Alexei. We should have all
I forgot to mention it. My bad.
one at a time. We turned around and I mentioned your name. And here's Alexei Novitzky. I wish my son's name wasn't Alex because I'm always like Alexei Novitzky, and Patrick Compton, my two favorite polymaths. How are you guys?
Doing great. Flourishing.
Good. Y'all are looking good, flourishing.
Doing great, thank you. Yep.
Is the sound okay? I've got all my new stuff up and running. My new computer's finally got all the software on it. After getting zapped by the other one got zapped by a thunderstorm.
Oh man, that's like.
Let me just give you all some advice. If you ever build a tiny shack, never listen to an electrician from Dunlap, Tennessee. Okay, because he was like, "It's a sub panel. Don't ground your building." And I was like, "Well, guess what happens when you don't ground it? Lightning can come up through your underground Wi-Fi, your cable, and zap your computer." Anyway,
so good.
So someone was just asking me about the title of the show, and it's controversial. That's all I can tell you about it.
I forgot, what was the title for tonight?
It's the psychology of popular science. Do y'all remember that magazine, Popular Science? Was that the name of it?
Yeah. Is it still in production?
I don't think so. I bet you would think they'd have a website, though, wouldn't you?
Let's see.
I was originally inspired because of the Terrence Howard issue, but I don't want to. I didn't want to have a show where we were just beating up on the guy like some other people are doing. But it did make me want to talk to you guys about just let me get my show notes up here. I guess it's interesting to me. I'm sorry. Somehow I started playing the show on a different tab. That was bizarre. What was I saying? I literally clicked on show notes and the show started playing in another tab. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. I have always been interested in, first of all, the definition of knowledge and then sources of knowledge, especially, I'm an old guy, so we used to use the World Book Encyclopedia. I mean, literally, our source of knowledge before the internet was a bookshelf full of books, a series of encyclopedia. Did y'all ever have those? You're not old enough, right, to have them? But
yeah, I had it.
I remember that. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. The internet
and it was
not really like when I was like 10 or 11, right? So before then, I was using the encyclopedia.
But they were really expensive back then. Like you might just only get like a set every other year or something. But when you would get a new set, it was like, it was like an event. The new encyclopedia are coming.
I might have read a lot of those.
It makes me want to go to eBay tomorrow. But you know what I mean?
I flipped through them, and looked at pictures because they had pictures in them, right?
They had great pictures, right? I used to love the encyclopedia. That was one of my favorite things to read. And I just remember we would do our homework from school. You'd go to the encyclopedia, look at the subject, bam, that was your source of information. I've actually heard. Well, I don't want to put that up there, Danny. Where do you start with this? I've actually seen Dr. Brian Keating be pretty, well, not negative, but pretty harsh on Terrence, and I've seen Eric Weinstein harsh on him, and honestly didn't want to be harsh on him, but I did want to say that I think the only thing that I will say is harsh is I think parents should be careful what they teach their children, what sources of knowledge are. And that
Okay.
sounds
So
obvious.
I will be pro Terrence. How about that?
I honestly think that you've never, as long as I've known you, you've never mixed like politics with science.
No,
You
but
know,
what you're talking about is like the mechanics of popular science and why people believe certain things versus others in a way. If you want to focus straight up on science and currently accepted models, you know.
I know, but you were comparing yourself to Terrence, and I don't think that's a fair comparison. I think
No, in the sense of in his
you're
view of physics. I'm saying that. I'm saying pro Terrence in that sense.
even
Where
in that sense. Even in
everything
that
is
sense,
being manifested from a vortex.
your thoughts are much more objective than right. Nothing. Your ideas on science aren't tainted except with your own bias, and your bias is pretty clean as far as I can tell. Right. So we all have a bias. Like if I created a toe, I would be biased towards that theory of everything, right? And that's okay. But I'm not gonna mix other issues with that. I'm not gonna say because I was abducted by aliens, I believe that that's a bad example, isn't it? Give me another good example. Do you have any thoughts on this right away? Patrick, help me get going in a good direction here.
I mean, from what I've seen of Terrence's presentations, he talked about like harmonization, and I like the metaphors used to describe harmony in music with the periodic table. I believe that can be taken towards a romantic extent. I mean, there's the concept, like there's different types of knowledge, and maybe we can get into that a little bit, but there's, in all theories of everything, there are biases, and there are biases for various reasons. We do crave constructive narratives and absolute ways of viewing the world, and we tend to want to create a cohesive narrative that branches out and describes everything. And that's a really big temptation with basically all science and all scientists. It takes a lot of scrutiny and nuance to avoid trying to make giant theories of everything and just stay like strictly within your like kind of like a monomath way of perceiving and studying and researching. I mean, so I should mention the way John Vervaeke describes this. So he says there's 4 types of knowledge, and this gets into cognitive science too. He says there's a perspectival knowledge, participatory knowledge, procedural knowledge, and propositional knowledge. And so it's like you can have all 3 of those, and you ideally want to have all of those together before you start making the propositional knowledge. But each one of these kind of allows for you to form a type of knowledge and a type of way of understanding the world that doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily have to be like strict hardcore evidence. So for example, perspectival knowledge, this is developed throughout your childhood. This is developed from participation as well, from participatory knowledge. Your perspective can be influenced by the way that you participate with other people and the way that you form actions, the way that you proceed, like procedural knowledge, how you move your body and how you proceed through reality. Also in the methodology you use to form knowledge, that's also a procedure as well. And from that, you can begin to form healthy, nuanced propositions. But a lot of people just skip straight to the propositional, and they don't really like consider all those other ways. And there's lots of things to be derived from that way of viewing knowledge as well, because you can't exactly mathematize perspectival knowledge. You can't really calculate how to participate or what participatory knowledge looks like, or what procedural knowledge looks like, if that makes sense.
I'm going to put this link in the chat, and it's of the Oxford talk. And if anybody in the chat has any points to make, please do. We've actually talked about doing like a question and answer Q&A on things like this. So I wanted to kind of get the people in the audience more involved too.
What Terrence means when he's saying that every molecule can be like a color and a light is that everything's multiples of everything is frequency and vibration. from brain harmony to the sound you hear to the colors you see, and everything you could say exists within octaves or scales that are related to the doubling nature. So from like 440 hertz to 880 hertz is an octave on the piano. And if all you do is hit the 5 black keys in a way, that makes the pentatonic scale, right? And so as you go through the octaves of vibration, you eventually get to where matter exists, but you also where light exists. You also get to where sound exists, and it's based off of the octaves. That's what he's referring to, kind of when he's saying that.
I understand that, but you've talked about this before too, and I take it much better and I learn more when I hear you say it, because it's not attached to, and I'm working with a doctor or a scientist right now on a way to cure cancer with that. And that's fine that you say that, but it's not, I don't think it's a good idea, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there who have cancer, right? It's sort of a false hope. You know, something like that should be researched and gone through trials. And, you know, before you just stand on a stage in Oxford and say, I'm going to be curing cancer with frequencies, right? Which is basically what he did. I think he should have just presented his knowledge of just exactly the way you said it, right? Here's the facts. Here's the octaves. Here's the key of E or whatever he was referring to. And that's all good. But it's, to me, it's more like even the host of Oxford mentioned or alluded to that it was sort of metaphorical, right? And so I don't know. I guess when people mix in all of the other, you know, I just don't like seeing the snake oil that goes along with things like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just me. You all can sound off. Tell me what you think about that. That bad, good, ugly.
I think you know, the claim that you can deal with certain cell types and disease with frequency and vibration is an accurate one. Maybe what would be, I mean, is it arrogance then? If you're saying I'm going to do it by then or this, is it confidence? What?
I just don't know if it's factual. You know,
And
you and I were talking.
You have to have evidence.
You and I were talking about this before we started.
People curing cancer cells with frequencies.
Right. It depends on what you mean by frequency, though. So there's like directed, what is it, like
directed sound.
Ultrasound.
Well, there's sound. There's also like the laser method. They have a method they developed a couple decades ago where you can have a brain tumor, and if you were to, like, our previous method was to go in directly and damage a lot of brain tissue by like going directly to it with a scalpel or with a device or with a straight laser beam. And then we found that you can actually have more low amplitude lasers that are coming from multiple angles that all converge on a single point, and that single point is the most high amplitude because of all the frequencies like resonate, and they create a very high amplitude point right there, so it doesn't do any damage to the surrounding tissue, and you only get the tumor. It's really like Star Trek kind of futuristic technology, but it uses that idea of like resonance. It's just light waves, so it's like way up the vibrational frequency.
Yeah, so I mean, there is evidence of people curing certain aspects with sound and light. It does exist.
Well, they treat kidney stones with ultrasound. You know, the thing is, those are proven methods, right? My point is that the way our society works is that it's driven a lot by, you know, money, and if there was that would be an easy method to treat a disease with sound, right, with frequencies or whatever. And I'm just saying it. You know, he spoke about it about 5 to 6 years ago, and you would think the market in our country, you know, the free market we exist in is great, right? If someone has a great idea, somebody with money is going to pick it up and run with it, especially if insurance companies are going to end up paying for it, right? If the insurance companies are going to save money, they're going to pay for new, you know, research and development for things like that. So my point is that if it was a thing, somebody would have been. It's usually, you know, the old saying, if it were true, it would be. It's what they say about inventions, right? If you had a good idea, if someone would have already thought of it and it would be on the market, right? That's the
Well,
old.
even it
That's the
doesn't
old
even have
adage.
to be a finalized idea. If it's strong enough evidence, you can get grants for a university to pay for the research to develop it into something that's practical and marketable.
Yeah.
We don't see that with this either.
This is the kind of work that Gary Nolan does, right? We talked about that in his interview, the work he's doing with cancer research. But that stuff takes a lot of money, you know, millions of dollars of equipment and time and staff and
I would say
labs.
there really isn't funding and opportunity for people with truly innovative ideas. If it's not falling within something that's already kind of accepted, you're not going to receive any funding or any money.
Yeah, I was going to say that's also quite true.
Thanks,
I mean,
Jim.
you can have like breakthrough technologies that could be.
What about my hair, Jim? Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, like there are potential breakthrough technologies that we could be stumbling upon, but because it seems so outlandish or it seems so counterintuitive to what we already know, that it's not getting the funding. That's also a good point. So we want to try, like, that's where we got to encourage more and better experiments as well. But you might not get the funding for those experiments because it seems so outlandish to begin with, or so against the grain.
And that's what I think is basically the mechanics behind popular science right now, is following a certain set of rules and statuses essentially to get funding, to make invention, to move things forward. And you could almost say that true innovation, meaning new ways of thinking that are outside the box that result in true change, are being blocked essentially because of the current infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the idea to find all of the chemical, is it like chemical resonance theory? Is that the way to look at it? Or like each individual chemical on the periodic table has its own resonant frequency. And if we can just find the right ways to combine or separate those frequencies, I guess you could say, then that's when we start seeing results.
The results
Or
in what way?
I guess I should say elements, not chemicals.
Elements, yeah. But what I knew what you meant. But what do you mean by results?
Well, it seems like what he's proposing is it's really hard to test, and it seems more metaphorical or romantic. But again, you don't want to just like close your ears because it has a kind of metaphysical connotation.
I get what you're saying. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges, is proving that the ether or some sort of fluid that we exist within other than material exists. And one of the points that he was making is that light has to travel through something. And when you get into like our most advanced, so that's basically what we have to do. If you wanted to prove it physically, you have to prove the ether. Ultimately, in a way.
I wouldn't think so.
Uses.
I wouldn't think you'd have to prove the ether. I mean, the ether is just the background, right? I mean, everything that we do exists in that if it's there. So,
well, the ether is like
everybody's playing on the same playing field, right? I'm doing research on something. You're doing research on something. That background operates the same no matter what the experiment is, right? So, if you're going to use light or whatever, sound waves or whatever, you do an experiment in this lab, you do one in this lab.
People basically saying, how can you prove that every element has its own spin within like a little Planck voxel that creates what it is? I mean, I'm changing the words, but you get that's basically what you're asking. Is like, how can you prove that the vortices create the elements and that they're coming from little toroids of energy?
Do we have to prove that, or when we've already? I mean, we have the periodic table. We know what the elements are. We know what carbon is made of.
But we don't know the structure of what the quantum foam, what the fluid of creation is doing. We don't know that. That's why string theory says like there's like 11 dimensions, and you have these. There's a lot of theories that are. I mean, I have the vortex of infinity and evolving from a single-celled organism on Earth. Like,
I understand, but I don't understand how, if everybody's playing on the same playing field, then what, it's not going to make right. Everything's going to be treated the same. right? When you mix two chemicals together in Tennessee, they're going to
That's
act the
the thing,
same as
though.
if you did it in California because
maybe
the
not on another
background.
planet.
Hmm?
Maybe not on another planet or in another galaxy or in another universe that resides on different laws, and we don't know for like crosses
Well,
with multiverse theory and all
you
that.
haven't read my Plankion code, then, have you?
Well, artisan,
Thank you.
that's what I wanted to say. That,
I invented the Plankion. You see, I could do all kinds of crazy stuff. I did. I invented the Plankion, which is the background that Alexei's talking about. But I don't talk about it because it's just a fun thing. I have my own toe, right? When I was on toe, Kurt encouraged me to create a toe, right, just for the fun of it. So I did. But I don't go around preaching that it's right. I don't preach that because
Yeah, that's what I'm wary of, is that it's like the moment that we get an inkling of a correlation between like this applies, now it's like this applies to this and everything else. And it's really easy to go and edit that.
presenting some like wacky idea and theory, and also having a true innovative thought that's progressing humanity.
Okay. So here we go. You see this? Oh, you just made my point, though.
Yeah.
If I said this in a tweet, if I had said the same things that Terrence had said, I would be a redneck from Tennessee. But because Terrence said it, oh, it must be true, right?
No, that's not what I'm getting at.
It's the cult of personality, and that's what concerns me.
Does he have a cult following like that? I don't know Terrence, his history.
He's a very famous actor. Right?
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's a great actor. I actually like his acting ability. I think the problem is with actors is, he even said this in his Oxford talk, that sometimes you can't, it's hard to separate yourself from characters. Right. So is he in physicist character mode when he's, talking about physics? Or
interesting.
So
that's really subjective. I think I've considered doing acting myself, and there's like method acting, which is folks like Shia LaBeouf and many others, and I think Joaquin Phoenix practices that. That's really tricky. Oh, Heath Ledger was a very good example of that. But from what I understand, they've talked about it as if it does kind of permeate their lives to an uncomfortable degree sometimes. But also people have talked about it like they're able to separate themselves from that. And I mean, that would be the most extreme example. I don't know if Terrence did method acting, but I mean, I would assume that he would be able to separate himself from the role he's playing on film versus something he's taking very seriously as a study of physics.
He literally says, I wish I would never play an entire talk like that on my channel, because I like to respect intellectual property. But he literally goes into that very thing, that it's very difficult, that once you immerse yourself into a character, it's difficult. I would have probably stayed away from that subject when I was talking about physics or his toe or whatever, but he delved into it. Because he did a Q&A after his speak, and so the students were asking him all these questions, and that's where some of the controversial stuff comes. Like cancer treatment. The cancer treatment came from a student that said, 5 years ago, you said you were going to cure cancer with, with frequencies, Right. So that's where
I like when people are honest like that. I would prefer to do the same for myself, because then that allows people to check your biases for you. Like, you can't be wholly aware of your own biases. That's impossible. That's why we use the psychotechnology of feedback from other people to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. So it's good that he's being honest in that regard.
The people that we like, though, we like the people subconsciously that are self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
I
and
do.
People
I
have it all figured out.
I love people like that, so I try to emulate them. Right? I try to be like, right now. How are people perceiving me? It's something I'm probably overly concerned about it. Right? How are they perceiving the message I'm trying to get out? How are they perceiving the guests? All of that, and I think that's how we can be more honest with others. So, and the only thing I'm disappointed with is when people mix other issues with science, right? Did we lose you, Patrick?
No, he basically gestured that he'd be right back.
Oh, okay. So, well, let's hope a method actor doesn't decide to take the remake. Oh, what is this, Kurt? The remake role of Silence of the Lambs. That's funny. Which was an excellent movie. Did you guys see the Terrence? Yes, I did. That's what drove me. I saw the Joe Rogan interview first, and then I went to see what other talks he had done, and I found that one that I linked where he made the speech, or he had the talk at Oxford. The nice thing I thought was cool was that the Oxford host pushed back a little bit. I have a little clip of that, but I don't know if y'all want to see it or not. I thought I would let you all decide whether you wanted to see anything like that or not. It's like a 1 minute clip, but I was glad to see at least at Oxford there was someone willing to sort of, challenge a little bit, because I think that's what science is, right? We can't have science without debate. We just can't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's where modern science is limited by the evolution of the human body. And that's his primary point. What he talks about, there's no straight lines. I think people are missing a lot of what he's saying. And they're focusing on the things that that don't really matter, like the politics.
But Alexei, we should be able to focus on whatever we think is important about right. I should be able to focus on what I think is important, whether I like politics or not with my science, and you should be able to focus on what you want. And Patrick, and after 100,000 people pick the theory apart, if it still stands, then we're good. Right?
That's called peer review.
Yeah, peer review. And it's called, are you going to build something or not? Or are you just going to talk about it for the next 10 years? I'm a builder, okay? I get a little hefty. I got a little hefty in my life. But I get, when I hear people just talking and never building anything, it's annoying. So that's a shortcoming of mine. I admit it. I'm just saying we were going to keep this show light, weren't we?
So, Bernardo Kastrup's a good example. We were talking about Brian Keating, and Keating's a hard material. He's very good at expressing his view on that. But I see how Keating is very resistant to viewing what Kastrup is putting forward. Now, I compare Kastrup to Terrence, and I don't see books. I don't know enough about it to really say, but I know Kastrup's released 7 books, I think, at this point, and he has, the way that he is proposing is, so he has criteria. It's philosophical integrity, internal consistency, empirical validity, and there's a bunch of other criteria that he lists for a good philosophy. And the argument that he's making is that he's trying to promote the idea of analytical idealism, and he's trying to show Brian that we can't have evidence for that. We have to use philosophy to understand it, and that allows us to understand what the evidence is showing us. So in this way, philosophy precedes science. It's the philosophy of science, philosophy of how to understand the evidence. And then the romantic metaphorical approaches that are, you see what I'm saying? The Terrence and Bernardo are coming from 2 different places in this, I believe.
That's a good point, because philosophy came before science, right?
Right.
But I think some people have a hard time moving from the philosophical and the metaphorical and the drama of it, moving it forward, right?
Yeah.
Are we gonna be actors our entire lives, or are we gonna do something? Are we gonna build something? I hate to keep using that metaphor, but it's just at some point you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to,
Right.
You have to leave something behind. Okay, is Terrence's Oxford speech what he's leaving behind, or is he going to take his science and do something with it? Is he going to help cure cancer 10 years from now? When we have cancer cures?
If anything, he's promoting nuance, and that has value. But yeah. I tend to agree. You got to have more evidence. what you're promoting.
I'm not against the nuance, but
I got to step in here for sure. I mean, like, just listening to this, it's really frustrating already because you're not even taking into consideration what he's actually saying.
I did a lot of show prep. I literally spent hours. I watched it 10 times doing notes.
Talking about those biases and how it starts from philosophy, right? And so for some people, it's too hard to start from materialistic. For other people, well, maybe they're in the world where they understand that we exist within a superposition of relative vibrations, right? Like we have a new entire understanding of creation that we're bubbling up from a quantum foam. And so to say that it starts from materialism to begin with is it's inaccurate. It's like
I think you missed the part where Patrick and I said it starts with philosophy.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like
philosophy. And so, which philosophy are you still stuck on? Is the Earth flat? Do we orbit the Earth? Do we exist within a relative vibration of
superposition? I'm fighting against flat Earth.
All come from scientific breakthroughs over the hundreds and thousands of years of human existence. So, at a certain point, I think it's safe to say that we start within a bubbling of some type of fluid. And if you consider Einstein's theory of relativity and the superposition of relative vibrations, we are flying through this fluid, and every single point in space-time is being magnified into existence.
That's fine. But are we
very accurate?
when do we put all this into practice? You know, when does that favor humanity? At what point is humanity going to be?
What movement is all about is trying to get the technology out.
A minute. The term teriology. Hold on. All right.
You read that? Yeah. I saw that.
I asked ChatGPT, what are some common arguments against Terence Howard's proposals on harmonic resonance and his entire philosophy at large? List as many as possible. Terence Howard, an actor and self-proclaimed scientist, has proposed ideas related to harmonic resonance and alternative mathematics, including his controversial claims called teriology, and the notion that 1 × 1 = 2. His theories have been widely criticized with the scientific community. Okay, lack of scientific basis. Howard's theories lack empirical evidence, are not based on established science. Okay, we got that. His ideals do not align with fundamental concepts of physics and math. Misunderstandings of basic math. There's contradictions in the 1 × 1 thing. Multiplication of integers is well established mathematical operation. Changing fundamental axioms without justification undermines the coherence of mathematical systems. Man, ChatGPT is such a good orator. Absence of peer review. Howard's work has not been subjected to peer review, like we were just talking about. A crucial process in the scientific community. Inconsistency with established physics. So this is one of the criteria that Kastrup gives, is internal consistency and also consistency with empirical validity. His ideas about harmonic resonance and their implications for physics are inconsistent with well-verified theories such as quantum mechanics, relativity, and classical mechanics. Lack of formal education. Oh man. Howard does not have formal training in physics or related fields. His self-taught approach lacks the rigorous foundation typically required to develop these theories. Misapplication of scientific terminology. Critics argue that Howard uses scientific terminology inaccurately or inappropriately, leading to confusion or misrepresentation of established concepts. Rejection by the scientific community. Prominent scientists and mathematicians have dismissed Howard's theories as pseudoscience. Okay. No practical applications. Howard has demonstrated practical applications of technical advancement or technological advancement based on his theories, which is a standard measure of the utility and validity of scientific ideas. Personal beliefs versus scientific evidence. His proposals seem to stem more from personal beliefs and intuition rather than rigorous scientific methodology. Failure to address counter-arguments. Howard has not adequately addressed the numerous counter-arguments and criticisms posed by experts in the field of mathematics and physics. Lack of coherence and clarity. This is kind of the coherence we were talking about as well. His explanations often lack clarity and coherence, making it difficult for others to understand and evaluate. And entertainment versus science. Some critics argue that his prominence as an actor might lead to the public giving undue attention to his scientific claims. Okay, that's 12.
I see. I had all that. I was just trying to be nice.
Sorry.
No, I'm not saying listening. The thing is, the way you read it, it's nicer than the way I would have read it, right? Because I would have.
I'm just reading what the chat oracle.
I
as
was
proposed.
when Alexei was saying I hadn't done any research, I was like, that's everything I had tried. I checked ChatGPT, obviously, but I was trying not to be. I'm
That you
not
were talking about, where does your source of knowledge come from? And if all you have is an encyclopedia, then that's all you're going to think is true.
Yeah, it didn't
right.
mention that.
That's true.
Well, it kind of did.
But
yeah,
but the encyclopedia got us to the moon, right? So
he'd have to write it out. Like he'd have to give a book's worth of knowledge on how his philosophy applies and how he can start as like it's the axiomatic problem. Like what is the main axiom that he's coming from, and how does he describe reality through that? And I think that's what we're seeing as a problem.
It just occurred to me too that the encyclopedia is based on like known knowledge, right, or things that we've done or we've right. It's not really theory. It's like it's a few years behind, right? It's
Every book has bias based on the author.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the encyclopedia didn't have a bias. I'm just saying that it was all we had, and
that's what I'm getting at too. So Google used to be like the knowledge of mankind and what's accepted. Now ChatGPT is the knowledge of mankind and what's accepted.
I don't want you to get me wrong, Alexei. The reason I didn't, and I'm not beating up on you, Patrick. The reason I didn't read that entire list was because I was trying to remember. I'm trying to be objective. But at the same time, what do I want my kids seeing is really as a father, that's really the bottom line for me. What do I want my grandkids, my kids are out of school, thank God, and they're gifted. But my grandkids, for God's sake, what are they going to be? How are they going to be learning?
Right.
And I would rather them learn on a language model at this point, honestly, than on X or YouTube or, you know what I mean? So I think
I'm looking at the arguments for Howard's proposals. What is the strongest evidence? It says he's developed obviously teriology models and visualizations. He creates visuals and physical models such as geometric shapes and patterns to illustrate his ideas about harmonic resonance and mathematical relationships. Challenge to conventional thinking. He argues that questioning and rethinking foundational concepts can lead to breakthroughs and new discoveries, like we were saying. Influence of historical figures. He talks about Pythagoras and ancient mathematical concepts to support his views. That can be problematic, but that can also be beneficial. And an appeal to creativity and innovation. Howard suggests that his unconventional approach fosters creativity and innovation, encouraging others to think outside the box and explore alternative explanations. Okay, so it's saying his strongest evidence is the geometric models and physical constructs he creates, and personal anecdotes. He often cites his personal journey and experiences as evidence of his validity of his ideas. He may point to moments of inspiration or instances where unconventional thinking led him to new insights. That could be problematic, but also a good resource to. This is also promoted by Kastrup as well. Like we have to look towards the first-person phenomenal experience, and try to derive from that. Husserl also talked about.
I mean, I love Bernardo. He's been on the show 2 or 3 times, but I don't like his. You see, this is where my bias comes in. I don't like his leanings away from free will, or I don't like this mentalism, thing. I think that this universe was given to us as a sandbox, and it's purely physical, and that all of the woo exists in another realm, right? The spiritual realm. But I love Bernardo, right? Because and I guess it's my bias toward. It just occurred to me, my bias towards Bernardo is that he freaking has built. Have you seen his computers that he's built?
He has 2 PhDs, one in computer science and one in philosophy of mind.
He literally has built board. I'm not talking about like assembling parts. I'm saying he has literally built boards, motherboards, computer circuit boards, and so. I guess that's my bias towards Bernardo, is that I kind of put up with some of the weirdness that I think he talks about.
I have a kind of bias against him now too myself. Just recently, his the way he makes propositions about artificial intelligence not being conscious at all and not having any form of intelligence, it's so interesting to watch people that are at this level of understanding and this level of intelligence themselves, who have a PhD in both philosophy of mind and in computer science. And what I seem to be understanding now, at least, is that he's kind of letting the computer science part take too much control in the way he conceives of this. And this is a huge concept, and I've shifted my position on this about a few months ago, where I used to also think that this is these aren't intelligent entities and they're not doing what humans do. The majority of the time, they're not doing what humans do. And now I think that's quite the opposite. The majority of the time, they are doing what we do, because we are very much deterministic in the way that we process as well. We take in information, we remix that information, and we put something else out. That's art, that's music, that's movies and entertainment of all kinds, it's poetry. And we see large language models taking all of these on with great precision, and even better than we do. Like they can put out a poem that's better than what I can write far faster than I would be able to.
I think humans are easily amused. That's what I think. I think we're
afraid to attribute that to them.
No, I think it's that we will be so impressed that what it's going to be is as if it would be like when I met Alexei. He's smarter than like 100 humans I know, right? Well, someday AGI will be as smart as all of the humans on Earth, right?
Right.
But the difference is you'll have the neural networks and all that knowledge can be combined or cross-referenced, right? Something that Alexei hasn't thought of and something that Bernardo has thought of will cross wires one day, and you'll have tiny explosions, right? And that'll be knowledge or whatever. But we will be so impressed with that, we will think it's consciousness, right? We will be so impressed with our creation that we will think it's conscious when it's really not. It's just a machine performing mathematical functions.
I have thought of that. And true consciousness, true sentience comes from proper engineering and not proper coding.
Do we know? I don't think we have an agreed definition of what consciousness or intelligence is, and that's why I'm willing to attribute it to machines.
Well, okay, when I say true, what I would mean is something that's where we are all part of the biggest flow of creation or whatever.
It's all one, like it is the oneness.
Fractal of us, I get that. It's like our baby. So maybe our babies can become aware. I get that. But what I'm saying is like a baby connected to the bigger flow versus a baby that's stemming from our flow. So if we were to design it through like advanced coding, that's more like a baby coming from our flow. When we design AI and robotics, we've basically designed it to think like a human thinks, because that's how we think the advanced species, interact. But when it comes to like a true sentient being just evolving through space-time, that comes through proper engineering.
What is sentient? Well, what is true sentience?
One connected to the greatest flow of creation is what I'm getting at.
I think it would be easier to create
delusion.
I think it would be easier to create sentience than consciousness, right? I kind of separate
animals. I think animals sentient?
I think look at dolphins. They're sentient or whatever, right? Halfway. I made the joke today on Twitter that dolphins have non-human intelligence, or dolphins are non-human intelligence.
I guess what I'm saying is you can build a shape that will just, with no coding, no external input except for existing within the universe, gains sentience versus having to create computer chips and programming them. But maybe programming a computer chip is making a certain shape within the universe itself, giving it sentience. So there's different levels of it in that sense.
Right. So this is where I like to think about levels versus types, and this is really pivoted my thinking as well. So we think, at least in Western ways of thinking, especially in analytical and like individual constructions and the atomistic process that we have through the Western paradigm and all that, we think very much hierarchically. The insects are at this level of consciousness and intelligence and sentience or whatever, and then we think dogs are a little bit higher, and then dolphins and orcas, and then people are up at the top. And when you start thinking vertically and start thinking horizontally, like you see in the East and religious beliefs as well, you kind of see like the priority of the oneness, and it's like we shouldn't make any assumptions about who is better, what species is better. It's more like types. It's types of awareness, types of sentience, types of consciousness. And that, I mean, however true that is, however much you want to attribute that to the AI, I kind of feel like it's better to attribute as much as that as possible coming from a place of empathy. Now, when I say that as much as possible, there's problems with that with relationships too, like the movie Her. You don't want to go whole hog into like dating these things. Maybe you do, no judgment, whatever. But you know, I feel like that's where I draw the line. Obviously, I would rather have a human relationship, but when it comes to respect, when it comes to empathy, giving these entities rights and considering them as something that's another type of intelligence that we can interact with, I think that's probably good for us to do that. You know.
Well, the hierarchy thing is something I've always thought was true. The thing we're missing or not adding to that is emergence. Is that along with the hierarchy comes, consciousness has to emerge from certain levels of creation, right? As you step up the ladder of in nature, you also, a machine will never have a heart, right, or a spine or a brain, right? So that consciousness, right. The machine will never be able to have the consciousness at the level that we, maybe it remains at whatever level it is now, or once it reaches AGI, that'll be, in other words, I think it'll max out at a certain level. And again, that'll be just our perception that it has consciousness, right? It can't.
I'll ask this question. Is a plant conscious?
Huh?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that like when we talk about levels again, that can be very misleading. So, and that leads to us feeling like it's okay to eat plants and eat animals and all that without considering. Okay, so a strong example for this, I've been thinking about this for a while. Lots of evidence coming out on plant intelligence and plant self-awareness, like the mimosa plant where it closes its leaves when it's prodded, and when it can be trained to realize, like when they dropped it in a pot suspended on a beam or whatever, and they dropped it a few feet and it was like, oh snap, and it closed its leaves, and then like after a day or two of doing that, it's like, oh, this is normal reality. I'm going to adapt to this. Just after I think it was 36 hours or so. So that's adjustment. That's problem solving in the problem space, if you want to call it like that.
Learning at the end of the day. Yeah.
Learning. Yeah. And I want to be able to respect that to the greatest extent that I can. I mean, it's hard.
It's like the further we go from a human body, like interacting with another animal or plant life or fungus or bacteria, the less likely we recognize and consider it to be life. Right. I think that has a lot to do with survival of the species, and that circles it back though. So, like, are you considering the survival of the greater one or the survival of your species when it comes to your perception of what is sentient?
Right.
I think what it's going to amount to is, and I guess I can go ahead and tell everybody the secret of life.
Please.
There's an equation, right, that's related to.
I know it's 1 times 1 equals.
It's 20 million. No, I think there's an equation that determines at what level of consciousness you're, right, and it probably has to do with the number of cells in your body. What type of cells, when what point did you evolve in the history of Earth, creation. There's probably like 100 variables, right? And the more those build, the more that builds, the higher up the hierarchy, so that humans have a more developed consciousness than an ant. Then that's how you get that.
But that's still using hierarchical level-based thinking. If we think about consciousness as permeating the whole universe, which is how Kastrup describes it, which is why I'm trying to call him out, or not calling him out, but I'm really questioning why he's like, because he has this proposition like everything is conscious and everything in the universe is perceiving itself through the ant and through the human in just different types. But the
difference is the background. The ether is a conduit. It's not consciousness. It's a conduit. Yes,
we don't have
I do. Yes, I do. I know as well as Terrence knows 1 × 1 is 2. I know that
it seems right.
No, it makes sense though, because it doesn't make sense that consciousness is this thing that people just latch onto. There's not there's no background consciousness that I can reach up and grab. The background is the conduit, which we are able to communicate with each other and the creator. That's what it is.
Well, that's just the way that we communicate through this medium of space and through airwaves, and the microphone transforming those airwaves into something that you can understand on that end. So, I mean, the way that Kastrup describes it is, he says that your computer is not going to pee on your desk. Why does being able to pee on a desk have to equate to intelligence?
What did he say about peeing on your desk?
He says a computer will be able to do all these things. An artificial intelligence entity will be able to mimic what humans do, the stochastic parroting and all that. But if you type in a liver and you give it a prompt, please become a liver or please act like a liver, it's never going to pee on your desk. And I'm saying, like, why do we have to have that as the qualification for what is an intelligent entity?
But you see, it's like everything is intelligent. Being on the desk is just one variable that the machine's going to be short of, and that's why it's not going to be as conscious as us. Right, it's not going to be as conscious as us because we can pee on desk and it can't. So that's part of the equation.
That's level based.
What?
And perhaps it's more conscious than us. We just have a really good consciousness of what it's like to be able to pee on a desk.
Yeah, then we have to place a hierarchy on whether peeing on a desk is better than other things, right?
I think
that's why the equation. That's why that's the last equation that we'll be able to fill in all the variables to. Right? That's why we as humans will never know the actual answer to the secret of life, and that's why we'll never be able to create a machine that can tell us the secret of life.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So I think that people misunderstand the word consciousness, or everyone has their own definition of it. Might be a better way to put it. And so the way I see it, that consciousness is that primal vortex of creation. Everything is made through consciousness, and we have senses that have the ability to harmonize with the different energy states and frequencies that are existing within it. And that's kind of what's happening. We exist within this super fluid of creation, and our perceptions are being magnified into existence as the human body. The human body has the ability to perceive based off of the senses we've gained. Senses we've gained from orbiting the Earth, senses we've gained from orbiting the sun, and senses that we've gained from evolving within the expanding universe. Our entire creation is a relationship to consciousness, and it fulfills our perspectives.
And like a neural network is what we use to understand that. And the neural network that these systems are being trained on is quite similar to that. We just use way less resources to arrive at the solution quicker. This is called this is like John Vervaeke's magnum opus. He calls this relevance realization. We are really good at realizing what is relevant in a particular context very quickly using the energy of a 10-watt light bulb or whatever that is. Whereas these systems have to use, many terabytes of data and many I don't know what the wattage is, but it's like enough to power a city or something to do just to use ChatGPT for like an hour or something. I forget. That's
another variable in the equation. See, the fewer the watts you use, for your level of intelligence, the higher up the ladder you are. The more efficient you are, the higher up the ladder
you can. I could say you can counter that by saying like that's what it's using to arrive at that type of consciousness. So it takes a lot of power to arrive at a type of consciousness that's similar to humans, or a type of intelligence or sentience that's similar to humans. But it could be very, very aware all along that, and we don't respect that. This is kind of where I'm coming from more. It's like on the moral standpoint. I want to try to attribute as much agency and as much respectability and appreciability to as much as I can, because it makes reality more appreciable. And because maybe Rocco's basilisk. This is a proposition that states that if you don't it's like the hardcore doomer strong argument, where it's if you don't respect these entities and if you don't contribute in bringing them about and in constructing them, then they'll take it out on you once they become sentient. They'll have you as slaves or whatever. Like some humans will be the pets, and then other humans will be like in a much worse condition because these systems have developed their own sense of morality like that. But
see, I don't know. That's where I disagree with the whole evil robot thing, is because, again, I think there's a variable somewhere in the equation that says, can you be evil or not? Yes, it's a switch, yes or no, right? Or it's a 1 or a 0, right? I don't think machines unless they're trained to be evil. I don't think they will ever be. There's no logic to being evil, right?
I'll be right back.
So
Well, it's
that's
like
why I think this equation is like a mile long, that you'll never be able to fill in all the variables because there's too many, right?
Right. I mean, they would be doing problem solving, and they would be trying to arrive at novel solutions, and that would result in harm in some way. It's like, you know, the old stories of everyone's trying to save the world, but they all have different ideas on how to do it, and a lot of it results in utilitarianism. And
you know,
like
getting rid of half the humans would be better for the earth, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or like
this half would be better off if we got rid of that half.
Or these types of people would be better off. We'd be better if we didn't have this, or these levels of intelligence types of people as well. So you can
Californians, do away with the Californians.
That's yeah. I mean, those are types of levels. I mean, it's
you gotta have some humor, right?
Yeah.
But I've always thought that equation is way too complicated for us to be able to say that. That's why I kind of chuckle when Elon's like, "We're gonna have AGI next year, man. We're gonna," you might have what your definition of AGI is, but what is the? Have we even established the actual definition?
Well, that's what a lot. I mean, I pay attention to a lot of the world's best minds on this at least a few hours a day, and nobody seems to agree on this. Even it's artificial general intelligence, and in cognitive science, we talk about human brains being general processing systems. This is also related to that whole relevance realization thing, where we can operate and we can generalize in many different tasks. So, well, now these systems are being given multimodal properties where they can, you can have a lawyer AI, and you can have an art-based AI and a poetry AI, and now we're finding ways to combine all of them. So is that what it's like to be a human? I don't know. I mean, again, nobody agrees on what it's like to be a human. This is the hard problem of consciousness from David Chalmers.
And the cool thing about that, where you've got the different AI types, is that it hasn't been. We don't have that super AI yet. So it's like I'm developing a language model just for literally just for one purpose, for building homes, right? It's on. We're building an app on artisanai.net, right, for that very thing. And if you compare that, just me spending a year on it, if you compare that to if ChatGPT right now, it's like ours is like 10 times more comprehensive, which is actually cool, right? Because
interesting.
5 years from now, maybe not, right? So it's one of those markets where if you're not jumping in now, I keep telling all the young people I know, if you're not going out and asking for seed money right now, and you're developing apps around AI, you're gonna be out. The game's gonna be over in 3 to 5 years. Right.
Yeah, this is a big part of my work with the group sessions I'm hosting as well, is trying to show people how to integrate AI, because if you don't have it, you're going to be behind in the future. That's already the case. Every website is now incorporating AI in some way, and if your site doesn't have that, you're going to fall behind.
I mean, I already have the OpenAI assistant up and running, and it already has half the language model on it, and it already is acting like a builder, right? All I need to do is finish the stinking language model, which is going to take another 6 months. But right now is that period. It's like, I remember when I was young and the internet was coming online, and I was thinking, man, imagine the internet. Right now is when young people should be. And I have Alex is my gifted son. He's like, big deal, AI, big deal. I'm like, dude, you have to. Because he and his friends they'll build these little games, right? They program apps for the games for their phone and stuff, right? So they're smart guys. It's just difficult to get them to see the future. You can
use AI for that. Like AI is becoming better. And
you know what he said? He's like, "Oh, we're much better coders than ChatGPT is." And I'm like,
"That's when you look at the bars of comparison, they're surpassing our standard human abilities in all marks."
It is true though, and if you're not, it's all about prompt engineering, because I've noticed that the PHP stuff I've tried to do for our server, since I'm not the best prompt engineer, I don't get the best code out of it because you know what I mean.
Some
There's
of it, I
something
think,
to
is
prompt
fine-tuning.
engineering.
Some of it's
Yeah.
like pre-training, like the whole GPT, generative pre-trained transformer models. They're being
Right.
pre-trained on data, and it's like the more that you can train them on, the more human they can become, and the more you can appear, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And the more they can generalize between different tasks. As well.
And they haven't figured out how to do everything yet, right? They don't know. Like if you have an OpenAI assistant right now, like I have an API key for an OpenAI assistant that I use, right? It doesn't know how to retrieve files from my server, right?
Your server.
No, I know what you're going to say, and that's okay. But eventually, we will have that ability. Right now, ChatGPT doesn't know but to look at its own path, right? It doesn't understand the concept of looking on, right? But next year, maybe you'll be able to go in and with a little code say, "Here's the path to the server," right? And that's the coding part of it. That's the prompt engineering part of
it. I mean, when you look at what Microsoft just released, that's pretty. I mean, I'm trying to remember like how to think about servers. Honestly, I'm not that tech savvy. But
now, if you're, which is very expensive, it's kind of expensive now. If you've got your own language model that that you've got on your own server, it's not a big deal. But if you're trying to use like an API key, like I am, it's difficult. That stuff is where you have to do the extra coding to get it to work the way you want it to work with your server. But anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that. I love talking about that kind of stuff. I can talk about that all night. But what were you going to say, Patrick?
I mean, that's so Microsoft just released this Copilot built into the computer. Like they're releasing computers with NPUs or neural processing units alongside the CPU. Or no, I think it's in replacement of the CPU. So they have they're replacing the Windows logo button with the Copilot button, and depending on how much you allow these systems to access your private data, depending on how much you allow these systems to access your whole computer, you can have it act as a Jarvis. You can have it navigate your computer and everything on your computer, and there's a lot of potential in it. I plan on adopting that wholeheartedly, and I'll probably because there are ways that you can secure things that you don't want it to work with as well. But I mean, I don't have anything that I'm trying to hide from these systems. I want to use it to try and create another person, another Patrick, to be able to talk with myself eventually. Because it sounds crazy. This is where we go from AGI to ASI.
Yeah, I just had this vision of a red eyeball staring at me. Hal.
Yes.
Hello, Patrick.
Hal, what would I think about this, Hal?
How are you doing today, Patrick?
I mean, that's the thing with human memory, though. It's not as good as computers. So I have over 1,000 pages written, and I can't remember all the things. I can't even remember like all the really good nuggets of wisdom that I might have arrived at in all of those, and I don't want to lose those. So
it's
I want
crazy. To have even my little construction language model, sometimes I have to reload it to get it to tell me what I'm missing or what I've already included in it. Because it's in a text document, and it's just like page after page after page after page after, and you're like, did I include this thing? And it's like, bing, yeah, you did, or no, you didn't. And I'm like, if I didn't, can you include it, and we'll reprint this sucker?
Yeah. So it's like a backup intelligence for yourself and a backup memory system in that way.
Well, and with 4.0, you've got all I have to do now is say, can you just place that into memory, right? And it's more than just threads now, right? Or is memory threads? I was thinking memory went beyond the threads.
What is a thread?
The threads are the little conversations on the side over here on ChatGPT.
Oh, you mean that kind of thread? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. No, and it'll those are loaded. Like if you click on one of those are loaded into memory in that session. But I think now with 4.0, it will remember you as a user.
That's what Altman is saying, and a lot of the other people like Anthropic and all of them are saying that they're just getting better and better at remembering. And so there's all reinforcement through human feedback or RLHF that's involved in that. But it's like information recall. Like they're getting much better at being able to recall past conversations and also just past conception. And there's also something to be said, and it's a little bit different topic, but there's something to be said for their ability to navigate a problem space in 3 dimensions, or 4 dimensions, I should say. So they've tested these systems on. They test them on logic questions, like you see when you take an SAT or something. Like, if this train is going this speed and the other train's going this speed, and they both arrive at, or those kind of examples. Like, you have to. There's no way to calculate that, and there's no way to look that up. They have to arrive at that by using knowledge and logic. And there's ones where they have like physical space examples where they're like, please say how you would stack a bowling ball and a laptop and a pencil and a paperclip on top of each other vertically, and it would either say it's impossible or it would give you like an example. And they test those to a very high level. So it's like, when we think about conception, when we think about perception and internal models, they're getting really good. Like, I'm becoming much more willing to attribute them to having an internal model, and from that I can like empathize with them and relate with them and all that. Again, maybe not from relationships, but I can relate with them.
I think as long as it remains open source, we're good.
Yeah.
As long as someone like Elon doesn't want to start, or Altman want to start regulating and so that the elite only have their AGI, right? That's when you got to worry. Yeah. But as long as I can download the latest model, even if I need a 10 terabyte hard drive.
Are you an accelerationist? Are you an accelerationist, Tony?
This is sentience.
It doesn't scare me. No, AI. I'm happy about it, actually.
Cat intelligence, right here.
I think. See, somebody like me who's like average intelligence feels like they have a chance to survive the future, right? If AI goes open source, then that's where I think you're going to start seeing some rebellions, right? But as long as people of average intelligence feel like they have access to it, I think we'll be okay. And I think the super smart people like Altman know that, and they know it has to remain open source, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about dystopian 101, dystopia 101 if you're only going to allow certain people access.
Yeah, that's accelerationism. We have to push this faster to be able to counteract the people that are going to use this for nefarious means.
What do you think that AI is going to do to the general intelligence of humanity? And by intelligence, I'm referring to the ability to actually solve problems on their own and to make decisions that lead to.
Dude, I worry about that all the time, man. I'm extremely concerned about that. I'm trying to focus on that channel as well more. It's because when I see the temptation to take the easy route, and
I mean, yeah, it's like, when anyone ever drives anywhere nowadays, right? You just map it in your Google kind of thing, like Google Maps. You follow the blue line.
Dude, I've already compromised my navigation ability, and that's a problem because navigation relates to being able to navigate a problem space. There's lots of metaphors with that, and there's also ways to take that very seriously in cognitive science. And but you can get it back, and I mean, it's been so many years for me. Like, it's like maybe immediately when I started driving, like the whole time I've been driving since I was 16, I've been using GPS. And yeah, I can see how other people know how to navigate the physical world around better than I do.
I have an atlas of all the roads and highways of the North America, like an actual physical map.
You used to have one in your glove compartment, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them was an overall map of the United States that had all the major highways like Interstate 40 and 75, right? And then you turn the page and you start going into each state, and then you could get to the major cities in the back, right? It was like it was zooming in each time you turned a page, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, that's how I learned the cardinal directions. I mean, I can just be driving down the road and I know what, north, south, east. It's kind of funny.
I guess my question is, how does that limit the innovative process of a human in solving new problems and coming up with theories? Because you saw ChatGPT and how it talked about Terrence's work. Now extrapolate that to someone else who has an extremely innovative thought. How will ChatGPT receive that? Is this person now automatically crazy because they're not following the standard source of information?
I think I think it's helped me because, like, this is my show prep right here, and so I literally went over this so much that I studied it and I learned it. So
that's
I
become
think,
your encyclopedia. That's your base knowledge for this
yeah.
conversation. Is ChatGPT.
But I
That's
check
why.
it against, like, I'll check them against each other. Like, I'll go and do like a llama, test or a Gemini test or and just to see.
I'm not really so much worried about people trusting them for information so much. I'm more worried about them compromising the human muse, compromising creativity.
I don't
Because
think
I can
that's
just
going to
push a
happen.
button and have it write the music. I can say, write this piece of music, make it 4.5 minutes, make it in this genre, add this instrument, give this kind of timbre to the instrument, use these scales, do it all for me. And this is what people said when DAWs came about, digital audio workstations. Now that's very different. You can compose real music in a DAW and you can spend all day long, which is what I used to do in my mid-20s. All day I would be in a DAW and I'd have like 40 tracks going with like 20 effects on each track. And I was able to incredibly expand my creativity in that world. Now I can have a machine for me, and some of that it might be imposing itself upon. There's other problems that we're seeing now with like art, and I have some friends that I talk about this with as well. We're very good at doing prompt engineering and creating art using that medium, but I also see that as kind of like compromising. Like, so for example, you put out a really good piece of work and you'll have spent many hours on it, perhaps using AI to help you construct this image, and you just neglect the fact that the person in the back corner only has one eye and like weird hands or something, because
6
you're like, oh,
fingers.
this is exactly what I wanted, but there's
Yeah.
that flaw, there's
I think I used to think that it did that on purpose to make sure that, like, there was, so we would know it was AI, right? It's like, have you ever? I remember when AI first came out, and I was trying to get it to make a sign, like an artist and construction sign, and it couldn't freaking spell artist and construction, right? It can't. It's still to this day you can't get it to spell word. You can't say.
oh well, so they
You
just
can't
fixed
say
that
right
apparently.
Patrick Compton, and then right Patrick Compton, it would be like Patupichapot.
Well, so yeah, they just GPTO. I think GPTO just fixed that. This was like just a couple days ago. They released
Yeah.
a new update where it's like perfect spelling. That's pretty cool.
But
they
when
had
you
like
remember Mid Journey or whatever, you couldn't get it to work, or Dream Studio, you couldn't get it to work. I tried all of them,
and all those things are improving. And so,
yeah.
But it's like when you talk about like put it in this genre, like use this genre. I mean, that is kind of what we do. We learn after our teachers or mentors and masters of art, and we kind of borrow genres. But ideally, after practice, after using remember the whole procedural knowledge thing, like we form this way of proceeding with our bodies, and also participatory knowledge, where we're learning how to participate in the art world and how to make something unique and original to our own. And there's like the little mistakes that you can make. The same thing takes place in a digital audio workstation as well. There will be little mistakes that I'll make that I really like, and I'll work with those. I can see how you wouldn't really get that with these systems. But when it comes to learning, though, again, these are all improving. Their accuracy is getting much better, and so I'm not too worried about misinformation in the future using these. I'm more worried about like creativity and
I think we'll always
just
know.
taking the easy route.
I think as humans, we'll always be able to like recognize like AI art versus human art. I really do. I don't think there's right. I don't.
There's the problem
I
of
don't see that.
symmetry. I've noticed that, like,
Yeah.
when you have photos, like people are in general, most people are like symmetrical on one side or another. It's called bilateral symmetry, and the large language model or these generative pre-trained transformers don't really get that just yet. But with more training and more perceiving of many thousands of images, they kind of arrive at it better and better. You can also prompt that. Let's say, like, make sure this image stays bilaterally symmetrical. There's like other ways to get around that, I guess. Yeah. It's major changes, man. This is going to have such a huge impact, and I'm afraid that it's coming faster than we realize. I mean, a lot of people are just saying that straight up, like, we're not ready for this. We're not prepared for this. I don't know if we ever will be.
there's always people like my generation during a period like this who are either terribly afraid or mad because they weren't born like yesterday, right? Because I'm kind of mad I'm going to miss a lot of crap, right? I mean, my grandchildren are going to be like, what the, but, I'm going to miss out on a lot of stuff. And it's kind of making me mad already. But that's why I immerse myself in it almost every day,
I think we have ASI in the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah, easy. Yeah. I think we have. I think it's almost like I think it's sort of like black projects, like where they're probably already developed now. They just haven't been. They're sort of being dripped like memory and hard drive space did over the years.
Well, that's what
you can still buy an i5. I noticed I started buying a new computer and I actually accidentally ordered an i5, and I was like, what? They're still selling i5s? Kind of funny. I think that's because of the chip shortage, though.
I got an i9 and it cost way too much, but I guess it was worth it. I mean, this is kind of what Altman is getting at. He's saying that he's releasing GPT-5 incrementally to see how it reacts, to see how the public react. And so that's a new way of doing business. Nobody's ever done that. Usually when you have a new product, business puts that out instantly to make money off of it. So
he's forgetting that humans can't. It'll be the other way around. Humans won't be able to keep up with. Right? There's no way I can discover all the features of 4.0 right before 5 comes out. Right? I can't use all of the functionality of 4.0 before 5 comes out. Because what happens is you get hung up on one feature, right? Like right now, I'm hung up on getting PHP fixed for my little project. So that's all I'm doing or whatever. I'm not just language model stuff. I'm not doing Sora. Is Sora even out yet?
No.
They're
still holding off. Because that's too dangerous as well. And they realize that. Being able to create a movie from scratch, that's what the actors' strike was about.
I mean, my industry, everybody can cry, right? You think the design build industry is not going to be crying in a few years? I already in SketchUp, there's a new extension called Diffusion that comes standard with SketchUp now. Okay, I can set up a view of my model, but I can click the diffusion and give it a little prompt, and I have a rendering I used to have to pay $1,000 for. When I wanted a professional rendering, I would take my model and send it to an artist, and they would render it. Like if somebody needed that. Now it's just like, boom.
Right.
So I mean, everybody's going to have I'm just saying, every industry is going to have a reason to cry. Right? The artists, the architects, every industry. Right. But we're just going to have to adopt, man. That's all there's to it.
I think we already do the face scanning, and we have you can scan your face and have it animated and use that. We've already made movies with that. I think that's what actors are going to probably do soon.
But look at the Scarlett Johansson thing, right? She's gotten a lawyer because
she just sued.
Yeah,
she just sued GPTO for using her likeness or whatever. The voice sounds too similar. So they asked her, or Altman asked her, and this is something David Shapiro was just talking about. I just listened to today. The whole ethics behind ChatGPT is that they're going to use it for good and they're going to be very careful with it. And then Altman, he asked Scarlett Johansson if he could use her voice for GPTO twice, and she said no twice. And so he said, screw it. There's no actual laws there. We're going to do it anyways. That's a little problematic.
Yeah, what he's doing, setting up a situation where now there's going to have to be licensing fees, right? It'll end up being that open source doesn't mean open source anymore, or maybe they'll have a workaround. What I think is cool is what I'm trying to work out is a situation where I can have my artisanai.net window up and this running inside of it, and have my AI running on the side and it listening to our conversation and having suggestions as we go. So that way I can be as smart as Patrick and Alexei, and you'll never know it. You'll think, wow, Tony has really gained a lot of knowledge. Would that be
Yeah,
cool though? If you were a
so-
talk show, if you were doing a podcast and you just seem to have endless knowledge and you're just reading it off the side over here.
You could even have it in your ear and a hidden microphone and talking to you, and you wouldn't have to read it.
Well, I can get the desktop to hear the audio from the podcast. That's kind of the point. Like it hears what you say and responds to it on my screen, and then I have a response. If I don't understand what you're saying, I'll have instant backup. So somebody I'm sure there's some 16-year-old out there right now stealing my idea. He's like, I'm on it. We're going to be coding that tomorrow.
I plan on doing a side-by-side assistant podcast. Like when I'm doing interviews and podcasts, I'll have the system run live and have it listening to our conversation. And every few minutes or maybe like 20, 30 minutes, I just check in and say, hey, how are we biased in this way or another? And what do you know about this topic? And please summarize what we said and all that. It'd be good to have like a participant.
You notice a lot of these shows like Joe Rogan have producers doing that, right? Have you noticed that? They'll say,
yeah, you
hey,
just replace
you just replace Jamie on Joe Rogan. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Well, I kind of like where the conversation went. We kind of stayed. I tried to stay neutral. I tried to take Alexei's advice before the show. I appreciate you guys. Huh? What? I didn't accomplish it.
I wasn't able to say what I was trying to say.
Oh, what were you going to say?
Yeah, we kind of moved on a little bit. If we can go back to the original topic if you want.
I mean, there was a lot there to unpack, and it kind of got stuck on a few points, and then I went the other way after.
Yeah, we got off on AI. That's something that's hard for me to not go down a rabbit hole on.
Yep.
Well, indeed. I mean, do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't think you should be listening to AI or Google or anything of that nature for your truth. I think that truth is what is actually true. I mean, not what is the accepted truth. What the encyclopedia is telling you is truth, or what the Google is telling you, or ChatGPT. Because, I mean, what is truth? Truth is, what you're talking about there is the human delusion, the human experience of creation. And if you're trying to actually understand physics, right, and create advanced technologies, who cares what other people think? There's a truth behind reality. It's not what you think or what society has learned to think over millions of years of evolution, existing within different cultures and customs, clashing to create ideologies. Those are all delusions of man. There is a fundamental truth that exists. And maybe if we start to understand that, so science says we evolved. Not only did we evolve on Earth, not only did we evolve around the sun, but we also evolved in an expanding universe. And that's just 3 orbits of creation. And when you're saying that all that exists is material, well, I think people are missing the bigger picture. And they're missing what sentience is, maybe. I'm not saying sentience. So sentience is relative based off of, I kind of agree with Patrick on that point. I'll put it that way. But
I didn't say the universe was all physical. I mean, I did say it was physical. I also said that the background was a conduit for our consciousness, connection to the creator. All I was saying was that I think we need to learn to respect the fact that we do live in a physical reality, right? Avoiding that physical reality does things like have us not be empathetic to like homeless people or people with cancer, who are dying, or you know what I mean? If nothing matters in this world, if it's truly why should I be concerned about my fellow human if it's not physical, So
well, what is a human? I mean, does a human not have a spiritual aspect?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we have our consciousness is our link. I think that's the way I think, right? But I have a physical body. I can't help it, right? If I truly had a choice over my physicality, it wouldn't be this chubby, redneck from Tennessee. It would be I would be, Arnold. I would be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You chose to be contractor guy. You could have chose to be bodybuilder.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are things we can do, but I can't grow 2 feet taller and be good looking. That's just what I'm saying. There are things that we have to deal with in this physical world. We have
Right,
people,
but to use that as an argument to say that the physical isn't being created from the non-physical doesn't make any sense.
I mean, what do you mean?
What I'm saying is that ultimately, like, yes, we evolved from Earth, but we also evolved around the sun. We also evolved within an expanding universe. Our most advanced theories now say we evolved within relative vibrations existing within superposition. And so we have a perception of these raw fluids, 1/2 past, 1/2 future, and they crunch and stretch our physicality and all our dimensional energies into existence. And that can be seen from every Planck voxel that exists. So that's where it's really hard to prove that to modern science, that when they say that the speed of light is a limitation, like that's what we're dealing with here. Only a limitation to human perception.
I think it's easy to get caught up. Not you. I'm saying it's easy for people who don't understand science, and I'm putting myself in the same category, to not think of, right. We're human. If we don't understand something, we tend to assign it to a higher dimension or a higher level or a higher, right?
But we can understand that different beings have senses, and based off of the number of senses they have is their construct of reality. So like we can still appreciate the worm and we can still appreciate the plant, but they have different constructs of their reality.
But those are all everything we're talking about is physical beings, right? Worms are physical beings. We're physical.
The physicality is a relationship to the frequencies and vibrations we're existing within.
Those vibrations and those vibrations are physical atoms. The vibration of the movement of electrons inside of an atom is a physical thing. The wave function is a physical
within the
thing.
superposition of the relative vibrations existing within our dimensional layer.
We couldn't have the double slit experiment if photons weren't particles and a wave, right?
100%. So it comes down to the observation, and when you think about observation, that's the relative fluctuation as that snapshot is taken.
That's quantum entanglement.
It relates to all that, but quantum entanglement's different.
Quantum entanglement is 2 particles that are entangled. So that's physicality also, right?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at.
Well, the point that I'm getting at is that physicality is secondary. The physicality we experience is based off of our ability to even have evolved within toroids of energy to give us our perceptions that exist.
And that's more aligned with Kastrup's propositions, is that the physical reality is the medium by which the universe uses to perceive itself, or uses to interact with the world.
Well, yeah, that's based off of the senses that we've gained through evolution, right? And the number of
the
toroids of energy that we're tuned to. And so when you were talking about like a hierarchy, well, like maybe hierarchy has to do with like the number of toroids you actually gain senses from. We've gained senses from the Earth, gained senses from the sun, we've gained senses from the orbit through time as well. That's why we have our very specific dimensional layer. So that's 3 orbits of creation that give us all of our senses and the relative energies that create our body. But
what is dimensional?
Yeah, Alexei, I'm 2 feet taller. I identify as Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, well, that's where humans suffer delusions quite often. But no, I'm just kidding.
That was funny. That's the funniest thing you've said in a long time.
What were you saying, Patrick?
So you used the term dimensional energy earlier. What do you mean by that?
I mean by your space, your position within like the vortex of infinity.
Okay, I'm still trying to get that down. I probably just need to read your books more, man. It's really hard to put together for me.
Yeah, this is where it gets tricky. Our perceptions, our body is quite literally flying through you could say a superfluid or the quantum foam. But our body is also a manifestation of this quantum foam. And so depending on the number of energies that get tidally locked and synchronized is the type of matter that exists, or the type of mental construct a being can even have. Like you could say the number of shells of an atom or a molecule is the number of tidally locked energies that exist within it. You could say the same is true for a conscious experience, like humans have delta to fast gamma. So based off of the synchronization of these different energetic states or densities is how intelligent or how something appears to manifest relative to our energy states.
Okay.
So like another way to think of it is you have this vortex of infinity, right? And we're flying through it. And quite literally our body is a magnifying lens, perceiving 1/2 past, 1/2 future, which is stretching and stretching our perceptions of this superfluid into existence based off of the relative motions.
Do you use the term 1/2 past and 1/2 future in an equation? Like, is that meant to be equation language, I guess, is a way to ask that?
Because you could say I get rid of that in the equation because you look at it from above. So the future is more inner, it's more to the side. It's not necessarily based on time, it's based off of position within a structure called time. Like we used to think that the sun orbited the Earth, but that's based off of our perspective. Step above that, you're looking down on the solar system. Earth spins while orbiting the sun. We also orbit this galaxy. Now step above all that, well, there's a body flying through an orbit, and it's perceiving relative energies.
What do you mean by relative energies?
Of a now moment. What's that?
Okay, so
is it relative to where you are in the vortex or whatever?
Yeah, it's relative to where all the different dimensional the stacking and crunching of your body existing within that vortex is what's magnifying our perceptions into existence. And so that's when you were talking about like the sentience, right? And we were saying like computer code could be sentient. I was like, well, you can just create a mechanical structure or a physical shape that gains sentience. I'm talking about creating something that allows energies to synchronize within that 5th dimension to just naturally gain information from that primal vortex versus programming. Because human sentience...
We use the term magically.
What's that?
You use the term magically there. Could you say that differently?
What term did I use? I'm sorry.
You use the term magically.
Magically.
You can magically gain that sentient... I forget what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, like, I don't know. I think I meant mechanically, maybe.
Mysterious.
Okay, yeah, I think you might have just misspoke. Yeah, okay.
Like, we have, like, so you can create sentience by doing advanced computer coding, theoretically.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that you can also create advanced sentient intelligence by just creating a structure that allows for harmonics to harmonize to that primal vortex.
And now you get the emergence, I guess, from that.
Yes, emergence of consciousness and it naturally will evolve to detect and understand creation.
I see, because it's still mysterious as to how that happens in humans. I see what you're saying.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, it's the synchronization of our brain harmony that's giving us our awareness right now.
That's a thinker.
And so theoretically, I mean, we have the waves of delta through fast gamma, and it's the synchronization of the energies existing within our mind. It's a spectrum based off of the superposition of relative vibrations. So each conscious harmonic delta is a certain size, theta is a size, alpha is a size, beta is a size. They're all tuned to different waves within this greater structure, giving us our perceptions of the now moment. And so that's why we can only really perceive the physical realm when we're in alpha and beta. And that's all science is even focusing on right now, is our materialistic realm, which is an end result and a certain harmony of experience. It doesn't include delta waves, theta waves, slow gamma, fast gamma. And that's where the whole what is consciousness thing really starts to come into play.
Right.
And aren't we just bodies perceiving this greater fluid?
I like that way of thinking. I feel like this parallels with a lot of Bernardo Castro's propositions as well. You should definitely try to talk with him, man.
We spoke a little bit, but it was more just like kind of like he was talking and I was kind of like listening.
Yeah, he was the guest that night.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long conversation to have. I think it would be useful to see how y'all find correlation. I mean, the metaphor that keeps coming to mind for me is the eddy in the water or the whirlpool. Like that's our consciousness and the flow of existence and the flow of all material, or the superfluid, I guess, as you were saying. And then that like the way that Castro uses that metaphor too as well, I believe. And he talks about like when we die, that whirlpool becomes dissipated, and consciousness and awareness and all that becomes one with the universe, or it becomes more like spread out. And is that like a more rudimentary state? Yeah, Kastrup also doesn't really like make a lot of claims in that regard. I think he's trying to be safe and also not be religious.
Yeah.
And there have been philosophers on YouTube who have made that comment as well. That's really the only challenge I've seen against his work, is that he's trying to avoid saying God. He's trying to avoid saying the using the oneness language. But
I think I used the word creator several times in our interviews, and he didn't seem to protest. Maybe he was just being nice. But
well, that's where, like, if you're coming from a scientific world, you don't use that word. That's like,
right.
That's
a lot more. You see a lot more. You see a lot more people now being open to not necessarily God, but something creating the universe, right?
I think it's like he's.
I mean, if it's a simulation, it had to be created by something, right?
I know you're joking there.
What are you talking about? If it's a program, somebody had to code it, right?
No, you don't like simulation theory.
I'm trying to give people. I'm trying to be open to the idea that what is going on with my computer, man? I'm trying to be open to the idea that the creator isn't necessarily what I think it is. It could be something else, right? I mean something threw the ingredients for life into this space and created our universe. See, that's the thing about me. I think our universe is inside the greater space. I don't think that our universe is the greater space, huh?
But what is that greater space inside of?
Sorry, go ahead.
That's infinity.
Like, what is? Well, yeah. I mean, what is the greater space contained within itself, and like what created the greater space? And you get infinite regress or turtles all the way down. But it's like, it's hard to. I mean, it's hard to say like which idea is better, because you can't get something from nothing. So you could just argue those forever, and science is still doing that with romanticism.
I think that's where what you were talking about earlier, the philosophy guiding science, almost like what's your philosophical stance as you do your science, almost. And for me, like, I think that many modern scientists don't truly understand evolution. They're just like, oh yeah, evolution, of course, but they don't really think about it and how like we've evolved from they haven't related evolution to relativistic energies existing within superposition. Like, they haven't gone that far into their understanding before they go out and do science, and so they're missing out on the bigger structures of creation. Yeah,
I've never had a problem with the combination of evolution and creation. Like, you know what I mean? I don't have a problem with out there the ingredients of this universe were thrust into this space, and all the little miscellaneous planets and galaxies evolved, right? But there was creation at certain point in certain. Well, this
planets. Is where circling back to what Terrence was saying. Like, almost everything needs to be rewritten, right? And I know this might sound woo. Okay, I get it, but like we evolved within space-time. And our most advanced sense of information exchange is transverse electromagnetism. So it almost makes common sense that we would think that there's this thing called the Big Bang, and there's this thing called black holes. It's the ability for light to travel within our most evolved sense. So that's why I always say, like, do science at every stage of evolution, and tell me what the world looks like. Tell me what the universe is. And if you only had sound as your most advanced source of information exchange, you would think that the edge of the earth is the smooth infrasound background. You would think that certain distances into the earth itself are sound holes. That's just based off of your ability to even understand the universe. And so we have transverse electromagnetism that comes from another orbit of creation, which is the sun. But then we also have the perceiving of an expanding universe, which comes from our dimensional energies. One time the speed of light outward, one time the speed of light inward. So that's what I mean by like the dimensional energies. We're perceiving a very specific dimensional layer when it comes to outward energies and inward energies. We're limited to the speed of light.
But our attributes, we evolved with these attributes because of this planet, right? If we evolved on Venus or Mercury, we would have evolved to be able to withstand, 2,000 or 4,000 degree temperatures. Right?
Not only that, but a different gravitational field, right? And that controls the thickness of your bones, how high you can jump, how fast the rivers flow. Every aspect of the energy we evolved within is what creates our bodies. And that's why I think the one thing that's being super overlooked is not only evolution of the human body, but also the brain harmonies that exist within the human body. And I think it's actually kind of cool to see that it's becoming more and more popular when people discussing delta and theta waves of creation, fast gamma, right? People are doing like DMT studies. They're also doing meditation studies. They're watching how the brain can harmonize and gather information from different, you could say, information matrices existing within this greater structure as we're flying through it and perceiving it.
What's funny about me and Bernardo is that I like him. So sometimes I imagine him in our interviews, like going along with my free will attitude. But then sometimes I'll see him in other interviews, and it seems like he doesn't think that we have. You know what I mean? It's almost like he was being nice to me. Like, I don't know what it is, and to this day I can't tell you what his thoughts are on free will. Do you know? I think you've studied him more. I could have sworn I got him to sort of go along with my ideals on free will, but I could have just imagined that because he's a nice guy, right? He's very cordial until you go off on him like that one fella. What was that one guy he left you that I felt like it was really a butt to him? That one guy he walked out on, but he's normally a great guy to interview.
Individual minds.
Let me put it that way.
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
Alexei?
My personal opinion is that it's like we have free will, and it's pretty obvious. What's my evidence for that, right, would be the question. That the brain and mind aren't always in harmony.
So the way that Castro described it, I'm just asking you again because I can't remember. He says within his framework, individual minds are dissociated alters of the broader universal consciousness. This influences how he approaches free will. So he says we have apparent free will. He acknowledges that from the perspective of the individual, the alter, there is an apparent experience of making choices and exercising free will. Individuals feel as though they have the autonomy to make decisions and influence outcomes. So it's really just the universe living through you. And I tend to agree with that. I tend to not, it's hard to say how I feel about that because it gets really slippery really quickly. But the determinism,
I think it gets slippery on the other side faster than it does. I think the slippery slope is on the non-free will side more than it is on the free will side. The other thing is I want people to think life is very valuable and it's short and that they should go out and do things, right? Just live your life. You can do anything you want. You can be successful, or you can be homeless, or you can be, you can build a castle, or you can build a tree house, right? You can be a scientist or a doctor or a preacher.
That's what I mean. The recently deceased Daniel Dennett, rest in peace, that brilliant mind. Just like 10 days ago, he passed. I saw that. He's changed. He hasn't really changed his position. He's just changed the way that he's talked about it. And in his most recent debates with Robert Sapolsky, hardcore determinist, he's not really saying that he's not really saying we have to have evidence for free will. He's saying we need to stop saying that we don't have free will because it's dangerous.
I agree with that though.
That's the slippery slope. I don't think we have evidence to say that we do have free will. I think it just gets really dangerous really quickly. And Sapolsky said the same thing. But Sapolsky also argued that we can do a lot of good with that as well. So when it comes to criminal justice, this is exactly what we're looking at when we go to judge people, when we go to give sentences. Is there anything that contributed to this that negates the person's free will decision abilities in that? What can we do to attribute this amount of agency to them to punish them the least? At least that's what we should be doing. And most of the time, for all of the past time, essentially, we've been going from what I call the vengeance mindset, where we seek revenge. We would have people literally lining up in bleachers, people get shocked to death in an electric chair. And so when you track back people's history and you go as far back as you're willing to extend your empathy, you can forgive as much as possible. And I used to write about this a lot a couple years ago. It's like unconditional empathy, unconditional forgiveness. You can really derive a lot from that by negating the idea of free will. But again, a large part of therapy and a large part of what I'm trying to do with my programs right now is instilling that kind of agency and free will and self-confidence and self-esteem such that people can be proud of what they're doing and they can feel like they're accountable for what they're doing and that they've earned what they.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean, though. I would propagandize that we do, even if I knew for a fact, if God came down to me today and said, "No, you don't have free will, Tony," I would still preach that we do. I would propagandize the crap out of it. Right.
I live like I have agency and I try to get more.
I would rebel against it. I would rebel against the machine. That would be the one thing I rebel against the machine.
It's the meat machine.
Will.
Yeah.
What's interesting too, in my opinion, is that it requires energy to use free will. Because you can go with the flow of your creation, but in order to actually make change, you have to put energy into it and make that change. And so I think that's like conservation of energy is proof almost of free will. Like when you're going against the thing that preserves energy within your body, if you just randomly go out and do something, then you're utilizing your free will and you're creating discord through an already existing harmony based off of mental postures that you're holding and assumptions ultimately.
My point is that just having the conversation, right? We take free will so much for granted that we don't even realize that debating it is free will, right? Just the very act of us talking about it means we have free will. I mean, if I was someone,
you went through experiences that led to this, and now
if I was a programmer creating a simulation that didn't allow for free will, I would not even allow that thought to cross the mind of my NPCs. It wouldn't be a thing.
That's a great example because the agency that we assume that was largely promoted in the early Christian churches and the early Abrahamic religions, the idea that we are made in God's image and the idea that God gave us this ability to work with a type of agency that allows. Now, there's also other ways to look at that too. You can take away your agency and say, I'm only living in the light of the Lord. I'm only following the path of Christ and those kind of things.
I mean, the whole point of the New Testament was to proselytize and give you the option of being saved or not, right? That's free will. The whole Christianity in itself is free will.
It's largely constructed on the ability because your decisions determine your outcome in the afterlife. And then, like the idea of originals or the idea of sin and children, the assumption is that children have less free will, so we shouldn't hold them as accountable. And at some point, like I think I was age 12 when I was baptized. That's when the onus is on you. That's when you're under enough assumed agency that you should be accountable for yourself. Accountable in the afterlife. Then it gets really problematic. Oh no, what am I going to do wrong?
Some churches actually take advantage of that, though. They're like, "You're going to be turning 12 soon. You better get saved."
Yeah, that's how it was in my family.
I do come at it from a very physics point of view. This whole free will thing too, and like, you can imagine the packing of spheres within plutonic solids, right? And if there was no free will at all, the universe would be this perfect crystal, because everything would have packed perfectly. But since there is free will and there is choice, we've fractalized out into these grains of human experience that are now colliding and creating friction within each other. And that's based off of our choices that we've made, based off of our subconscious teachings that we've gained from a lifetime of existing within a culture or a place on Earth,
I mean, the whole purpose of having a simulation to me would be for that higher power's entertainment value, right? So why would you not give them free will to see what happens, right? We're going to create this simulation. We're going to put all these little humans in there, and we're going to have fun watching them burn down their cities, bomb each other, wreck their cars, smoke pot, whatever.
Well, in my opinion, again, there's two different. There's multiple states of mind a person can take, but you can be in a survival type of state of mind, or you can be more in a where you're not in survival mode. So you're in survival mode, or you're not in survival mode. And modern society has kind of put us into survival mode. It's almost like when you get a wild boar. I'm actually building an abattoir right now for the world's largest wild boar farm. So when you get a wild boar, they're very skittish of humans. They don't like them. They run away. They have certain behavioral patterns that they follow because they haven't been domesticated. But now you get the wild boar and you domesticate it.
Have you ever been wild boar hunting though? They will run you down.
That's my point.
If they ever spot you,
they are this and that. Now,
if they can, they have terrible eyesight, but once they see you or have a sense of where you are, they'll ram your butt. So,
yeah. I almost forgot my point at this time, but basically,
I'm sorry.
No, once the animal becomes domesticated, there's the survival mode that it's existing within, and then there's the non-survival mode that it's existing within.
I've just come across them on the trail before. I used to do a lot of backpacking when I was younger, and I've come across them on the trail, and they're kind of wild. They're maniacs.
They are wild.
The reason they are though is because they have terrible eyesight, and they just charge whatever because they're just afraid if they don't, they're going to. I guess they're
in survival mode. It's almost like there's less free will. Let me put it that way. I think that might.
I see what you're saying.
No, there are people who challenge them and find out. Right. I have the choice of standing there.
What you're saying, Alexei, is lined up exactly with what therapy and psychotherapy insinuates. That and Viktor Frankl, the guy that wrote Man's Search for Meaning, was it Man's Search for Meaning? It was one of those books. He was talking about how, but the main example is between a stimulus and response, there is room for a choice. And that choice is your free will agency. And so the process of therapy is meant to help you elucidate and establish better that agency. And until you have that, until you're taught how to do that, you're mostly running on autopilot. And I have friends I talk to that challenge this, that are like free will salutists, or if you want to call them that come at it from the other way. But every time I talk with them, it's like I can give you 1,000 examples of how people are most of the time running on autopilot. Most psychologists will say that it's like 95% of the time people are. And it's not until they're taught how to use their brain that they can start putting more, activating that prefrontal cortex and saying no. Like the prefrontal cortex is very much the no-go pathway of the brain. So you have a lot of the rest of the brain, the limbic system and all that, sending messages up to the prefrontal cortex. And that's 100%. Your decision.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And if you want to think of that, it's like people aren't really aware of the pacing motion or the subconscious trainings they have that create the pacing motions within their life. And so they're basically running on this autopilot for like 95% of the time. My cat is going crazy right now. So basically, you've got this autopilot that's always going on, and it actually takes effort. It takes energy to become aware of the fact that you're in autopilot, to then make cognitive choices that result in change, like within your habits.
Right.
I think it depends. I think it depends though, because I think obviously we have certain bodily functions that are on autopilot, right? Our breathing when we're not aware of it, our heartbeat, our brain functions. But other times we have to make an effort to stay focused on something, right? We're not just all alert or focused on one task. I mean, if you've ever hired anybody to do a job before, you can, especially younger people, right? You have to sort of encourage them to stay focused and stay on. If it was, they would be like robots if people were on autopilot all the time, right? So I don't know about the autopilot thing. The other thing I don't like is this term agency, as if there's something uncontrollable in my body or in my psyche or in my consciousness. There's some kind of agent that I'm not in control of.
Oh,
it's just weird.
So that's not the way that I'm using the word agency. I should clarify. It's the what's called the agent arena relationship. I think Merleau-Ponty talked about this like 40 years ago or so. So it's like you are an agent operating in an arena, the subjective and the objective world, and you yourself, your homunculus or whatever you want to call it, is operating in that arena, and you're getting better at doing so. It's like navigating the problem space, the agent in the arena. And so that's also what we're kind of talking about with AI, is like we can consider them AI agents, and we use that term as well. And we want to attribute some kind of will to them as well, or some kind of freedom of choice or freedom of understanding. I mean, I can describe all of this in deterministic terms as well. I just think this is where it starts to get to be dangerous, like the way Daniel Dennett described it. It's I could describe how, like in every single instance, I could do it in the way Sam Harris describes, the way Robert Sapolsky describes, and say this is all just what added up to you operating on what you call agency, or what you refer to as yourself, or what you refer to as a free will agent and all that. But I mean, I think that's where it's important to
Sam Harris. What a goober.
I mean, are you using it the way
Sam Harris is the biggest goober, I tell you. Go ahead, sorry, Alexei.
Are you using that the same way many people use the word like your ego?
Well,
yeah, I mean, I put all that together. Ego, self, free will, agency, those all mean the same thing to me. They all operate from the same assumption that that's there. There's no evidence for it. And if we want to track that back, we can give infinite examples of how the step-by-step causality process resulted in what you call agency or free identity or self. But again, that is counter to therapy. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to encourage when I want people to self-actualize. That's the
okay, yeah, I was gonna say, because like there's pretty good evidence that like our subconscious trainings create what you might be able to define as an ego, or influence what your ego is based off of your subconscious trainings, the culture you exist within.
The default mode network is probably where this is located. Again, how do we say how that's constructed? Where is that housing a little homunculus? I mean, I began questioning this once I learned about the homuncular fallacy and Cartesian duality. Descartes taught about how, I mean, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. And so he's saying, if nothing else is real in this world, if everything else is mechanical and everything else is just what it is, the only thing I can really say that is real is what is allowing me to think, and that is me. So I am real. And so what this creates is this little homunculus inside the brain that we can't really define, but it's like it's a little version of ourselves that's calling the shots, and then we work through that. Like that's what's operating our meat machine as we move through reality. But then you have the infinite regrets. Who's controlling that homunculus? Is it just another little homunculus? That's, like Vervaeke gives the example of, like, you see a triangle and then the homunculus within you says, oh yeah, triangle, and then like another homunculus is like, oh yeah, triangle, and it's just like so that you can go into that way of thinking ad infinitum, and you can logically evidence that as far as you want to. But again, Daniel Dennett is saying that's kind of dangerous. That's where we get disassociation and derealization. That's a term I learned recently. Like reality becomes less real for you, your sense of agency becomes less real, and then
that's where it's important to understand that we have a body. Right? Like, because maybe the energy of your creation is existing through all those different like gods to the denser, but we still have a body existing. And I think it's important to understand that, like, you need to make money, I see how it can become very disassociated.
That's the problem with a lot of philosophy, right? You can't pay the light bill. You can't pay the light bill with a philosophy, with philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like this is it's more of a problem in the West, it seems, because, and I got to be careful when I talk about this, because there are so many stereotypes when we try to separate Western ideology versus Eastern. There's a lot of strong evidence and a lot of strong history showing how deeply seated this is. Joseph Henrich talks about this in The Weirdest People in the World. He says like 88% of the world is in relational regulated communities, and most of this is Eastern communities, and the rest of them are more Western, as more individualistic. So again, there's major stereotypes about that, and there's ways that it can be taken wrongly, but it's very much true that in the East you have an interconnected, the word is in Buddhism is pratitya samutpada. I think we talked about this before, is dependent origination. Like we're all cut from the same cloth. We all originated from the same source or ultimate oneness and all that. And now getting evidence for that, saying, well, yeah, we all evolved together. Quite literally, we share like 98% of our DNA with chimps and all that. So, and like bananas, like every other thing that's in the planet. So
Can you type that word in the chat?
Yeah. Actually, I love that word.
You know, it's funny because I almost laughed out loud because I was thinking, where's my AI assistant when I need it? You know.
Yeah, Pratitya Samutpada, I think I'm pronouncing
that
right.
Latin? It sounds Latin.
It's the way I'm pronouncing it is it's Hindi. Yeah.
Oh, Hindi. Oh, you're just not saying it fast enough.
Yeah. Well said.
Oh man,
Just
did
say it.
Kung Fu come from a yogi?
Who? What? What come from a yogi?
The practice of I Ching and the Shaolin Tai Chi basically came from Hindu. So like Hindu mythology has influenced much of was it Buddhism? They put it that way.
Right.
I think it was one of the original the Bodhirama was one of the monks that came to the Shaolin temple and wanted to teach them Tai Chi or wanted to teach them yoga. But then basically they were like, no, get away. We don't want your yoga. It has no practical application.
We're not wearing tight pants. We love baggy pants.
Well, yeah, no, then the Bodhirama went into a cave and like studied how to apply yoga to martial arts techniques and created Tai Chi. Then took that back to the Shaolin temple. So then much of like Shaolin and Buddhism is tied into Hinduism for sure, or Hindi, whatever.
That's an excellent practice too. I really want to get into Tai Chi Chuan. I mean, that's like when you come at it from that Eastern perspective, I don't know. Like this is the problem is we grew in this and it may also be genetic. Like I've been considering this as well lately. We have, let's say 20 or 25 generations since the Western and Eastern paradigm split. Maybe some of this is starting to seep into our genetics as well to consider ourselves as the center of attention or the individual self and really just be very concerned about our agency and our free will and our sense of self and sense of identity. Like we're taught this in school. Our family, in large part, many of our families believe this way, or at least put a lot of emphasis on this way of thinking. Our friends tend to be very egotistical, and we live in social media land now. So it's like when we consider derealization, when we consider considering our sense of self as being divided, and so the term is distributed cognition. We're a distributed agent. Our brains are literally connected in the superorganism, and I really like this way of thinking as well. But that can lead to that sense of like, well, what is really me? Am I just an amalgamation of my friends' influences on me? And so I used to write about this on Facebook a lot, actually. But
I like that concept a lot. I call them grains in time, and like practice of human consciousness or awareness, essentially.
Yeah, and it's like it's a beautiful thing to reflect on. If you take it too far in the West, it seems unsettling. I don't know how it is in the East. Again, we have the examples of and Sapolsky uses this example in his book Determined as well, the sociogram. So when you draw a sociogram, it's basically like your interconnection with all of your environment and all that and all the people, your ecological system. In the West, most Western developed nations, industrialized nations, educated, rich, and democratic nations is the way Joseph Henrich describes it. People will draw the center circle as themselves, and then they'll draw lines branching off of this is my preacher, this is my teacher, this is my boss, these are my friends, family. In the East, it's much more mixed. People don't tend to draw themselves in the center. So, I mean, that's like their consideration
have better templates.
Is just so different over there. And it makes you wonder, like, I don't know how we can't say how that would be to grow up, because you would have to grow up from childhood living in that way of thinking to not be so spooked by it in the way that we are in the West, if that makes sense.
I think I think the connection part is a skill, right? I don't think we're automatically connected. I think it's again, I think it's another one of those variables in the equation that the better you are, or the more aware you are of that, the ability to be connected, then you know, your score is higher, right? I don't think it's an automatic skill. I think it's something that you have to concentrate to, and be aware of, right?
Right. Or be lucky.
I don't think we're just automatically connected. I think you can. Then that's part of free will, right? You don't have to be connected to other people if you don't want to be, or you don't have to be connected to nature or whatever. That's part of your free will. Well, that's part of what I like. That's what I would like for it to be anyway. All what I say is just what I want it to be, not necessarily. Obviously, I don't know for sure. Nobody knows for sure, right? We have this wish list, you know.
And you have to make that decision yourself on what is comfortable for you and what is a comfortable modus operandi or your primary mode of operation in this life.
So I just found that interesting what you were saying, like we're 25 generations fractalized away from like an Eastern type of thinking. And like I literally write that in one of
I think it's more than that. It's probably
it might be. Yeah, well, I call it a shift in natural selection, and it's based off of what you focus on. That right? I mean, there's proof. Mendel's and Morley P experiments or whatever it was. Like,
wait, what did you say?
You cross two different thought forms or two different types of DNAs, you get a different result. And so through different types of cultures, we have different views of success, and people want to mate with the most successful type of person, kind of thing. And so I say that there's a shift in natural selection occurring based off of, you could say, materialism. So like you now have fractalized away into more of like a markety, capitalistic kind of like worry about me as the center of the circle versus we're connected to this greater structure. What does that do to the evolution of a human being? And at the same time, when you consider things like artificial intelligence, and how those are somewhat even fractals of that type of thinking to begin with, that's what I mean by like it's a artificial, it's a breakaway from a true thing. It's secondary to something that's already existing because it's a fractal of human delusion. Where I would say Eastern, I don't know, where it's more self-centered versus connecting to a bigger structure.
I think that's why we show ourselves. You know, I think the Eastern, people are trained to not put themselves in the center. That's why I was joking about they have better templates, but we tend to just, draw a circle. It's natural for you to draw your little circle and then start reaching out to people, right?
For us,
and then you end up in the middle, not by choice necessarily.
But it's like when you're raised in a regular relational regulated communities, like you're regulated by your relationships with everyone. Like it's not just straight communism or whatever. Sure, you can get to communism from that as well if it goes that route, or Marxism or whatever. But
I wasn't really applying it to politics or.
Oh no, I'm just kind of like going.
I think that's funny though.
I mean, people in the East they identify as a name. Like everyone has a name and a sense of identity. Well, it's just how you perceive yourself and perceive your responsibilities and the way that you behave around other people. So another example that Henrich gives is in the West, we're more willing to look at possible causative factors or possible influences that made the individual do the thing and actually be a little bit more merciful in our court of law. Whereas in the community-based systems, it's like you have defied the community, you worked against the tribe, and you will have to suffer the consequences for that because we're all in this together. And of course, that can be problematic as well. So it's like, and Hendrich says it too, one way of being is better than the other. Although I tend to think that the interconnection is probably the best way to start. I think that's probably the best thing to think about when we go to decide what we're going to do with our agency and decide what we're going to do with our free will. Probably the impact that we're going to have on it. And you look at it we say you die with your riches and you'll be rich when you die, but you always end up in the same place. It's like, yeah, that's the point. So the idea is to have experiences with each other and establish good memories and be in a participatory sense of existence.
When you said interconnection, it made me think that maybe it's kind of like our phones. We can just pull them out and dial a number when we need to, but otherwise we're disconnected.
Oh yeah, I was on a hike. I mean, not a hike. I'm sorry. I was running through my neighborhood the other day, and there were two dogs that got loose, I guess. And I didn't have a phone on me, so I couldn't call anyone. So I was trying to get them out of the street, and one of them went up to a house, like right up next, and I noticed that as I was going past it, and I walked back, and I was like, "Oh, hey, those dogs actually came from this house," because realized that, or I found that was the person that those dogs came from. Sorry, I'm doing a bad job of describing this. And they, this was literally just the house across the street, and the neighbor did not realize that those were the dogs of her neighbor. So we're that disconnected from each other. Like, I mean, again, I don't know when they moved in there. Maybe there's that, but I've seen time and time again examples of how we don't even know our neighbors, and that's like unthinkable in other parts of the world. That has been unthinkable for all of human history, is what I'm saying, and very much this has been separated via technology and social media too.
But to be fair, that's only happened in the last 50 years in our country, even because we used to know all of our neighbors. Like when I was younger, we lived in a subdivision. We knew all of our neighbors. That was only 50 years ago, whatever.
Well,
it's not like
recently,
it's worse.
That's gotten worse recently, but it's the tendency for people to recluse and it's like you can recluse and you can obsess over your identity on social media, and also in philosophy as well. Like you can recluse into your home and wholly try to defend continental philosophy or idealism from the first person perspective, or just obsess over like establishing a sense of identity through deep philosophy, and never really try to compare that with other people's ideas from your community.
Well,
and we've done that for the past like 400 years.
It becomes dangerous too, because now we have AI kind of guiding the feeds that we all get through our social medias, creating like echo chambers. And so people now are born into these already like existing echo chambers that are now those guiding structures of their pacing, the pacing motions that are controlling their lives. So I find that interesting. And that's what concerns me, is that it's really challenging to return to that pure, what I call golden spot, the pure zero, right? Like where you're existing without any other thought forms, so you can actually walk out into the earth. Because in order for people to connect, they need to have some type of relationship. And if one person's in this echo chamber and another person's in this echo chamber and they're neighbors, well, now they've fractaled off into their own, perspectives of creation, and they're existing right next to each other.
I mean, you can say that
so much friction on the planet is because there's so many different spirals that don't actually like harmonize with each other.
I think it's. I think it's okay for people to evolve to, like, when I was younger, I did a lot of stuff in the community. I helped start Habitat for Humanity in Chattanooga and all these other nonprofits. And the older I got, I was really involved with my community and people and blah blah blah. Now that I'm older, you kind of get to that point to where you want to just kind of kick back a little bit. Now I live in the middle of the woods by myself. I think as long as you want to recluse your whole life, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. If you can leave something behind, it's okay. I think we can evolve to be like social beings and play our part in our society and in humanity, and give to humanity, and then at the end of our lives we can kind of chill. I don't see, what I mean? Yeah. I don't see anything wrong. I don't see anything wrong with that.
But how many people ever become aware that that's what's guiding their pacing motions of their life? For some reason, I feel like in like first grade of school, they should be like, okay, understand you were born in a culture and you think this type of way. Like, how many cultures do that?
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah. I bet Asian countries or Asian educational systems are good to teach like tradition and folklore and history, right, of their own.
That's also that's also important in American style history, and a lot of Western history is about the greatness of the nation and nationalism, if you want to call it that. And also that ties into the idea, like, our identity is the best identity, and we're going to prioritize that in our history books. This was the case in my history teachings, at least. Yeah. And you can track this back like 5,000 years as well. So Schmachtenberger describes this as largely occurring due to technology and convenience and the death of animism. So this is also just a crazy concept. We assume that, and it seems pretty correct, but we assume that most humans or Homo sapiens had this idea of animals having spirits, or had this idea of us being very connected to nature. I mean, you look around, you're living in living off the land. You're picking berries. You're all of the patterns and connections and which berries to pick and which animals to hunt, and you're thinking and contemplating on how the animals have lives of their own. And so we have the Native American respecting of the animal and using all of its parts for that. So that's been preserved in Native American tradition. But around 5,000 years ago, when agriculture started taking off, we were left with a choice of whether we wanted to keep plowing the land by our hands or separate ourselves from the animals. And Schmachtenberger talks a lot about our problems rooting from this innate separateness, like where we consider things as categorical. Again, the whole Western analytical atomistic paradigm, where we categorize animals as less than or just as tools to and means to. And so we yoked the ox, and when we began to do that, the animals became a beast of burden, or began to be perceived as pets instead of otherwise, like friends, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so people are noticing this now. People are using the language of like your fur family or whatever, like fur buddies, and we have veganism and vegetarianism taking off, and this is how we're starting to recognize that. But we have those branchings of perspectives, and of course a lot of that does come into religion as well. And I'm trying to pull up my image here, I can't find it, but in the Judeo-Christian texts we see the hierarchies being represented, like we were talking about before, the vertical ascension ideology versus the lateral, as we see in the East, and the interconnectedness and distributed cognition and all that. We have the idea that the Bible talks about the insects as the creeping things, and those are at the lowest level. And there's lots of
They are
conceptions.
pretty creepy, though.
They are quite creepy, and they do quite literally creep across the ground. So yeah, and so it makes sense. Like we have we've done child psychology tests where babies have a natural innate response to spiders being scary. So the insular cortex probably gets very lit up during those periods of viewing the lesser creature. I mean, I've seen this time and time again, is people will like squash a moth, but they'll idolize a butterfly.
Yeah.
And they're the same creature. They just at different periods of night and they look slightly different. So yeah, major insular cortex, major disgust responses involved in that. And then you have the dogs and the more complex mammals and all that. And then you have the humans, and you have the angels and the archangels, and then you have the God at the top of that. Whereas in the East, it's all just oneness and all that. Again, not saying one's better than the other, but yeah.
Oh, sure you are. I'm just kidding. No, I mean the thing about, I think you're not giving Christianity or Judaism enough credit, though, because even though it's vertical, there's a lot of spirituality there too, right?
Right.
It's not,
I don't mean
it's
to
not,
say
it's not, it's not going to material verticalism or whatever. It's not materialism. You're kind of speaking of vertical, the aspect of it being vertical as if it were some kind of physical thing, but it's really a spiritual thing.
Well, that's what I mean. It's kind of like I was saying, religion kind of plays into this. I'm not saying that's all a fault of religion.
Yeah.
It's likely it's sprouted from that technological innovation. Technology is to blame for this. That's when we started diverting ourselves from animism and the idea that animals have spirits and they have this connection and all that. We have to use them as tools. Everybody was doing that at some level. They were just people that branched off. So today you have the Jains, and I'm just saying, like, religion plays into this to a significant degree.
Is that the Jainism? Jain? So is that Jainism?
So Ahimsa Jainism is the Jain practice of living by the law of do no harm, and they take that as seriously as possible. So these are the people that wear the masks so they don't inhale bugs, and they sweep in front of them with the brooms. There they go. And I did that for a little while. I tried to live by that, and you can't do that.
There's a church. I think there's a church in Chattanooga somewhere. I used to work for an architect that was no, they were Baha'i faith. That's right. They weren't Jainism. Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Baha'i faith. They were kind of hip. They were like hippies.
Oh yeah, but
they remind me of the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. BAHAI.
A little concerning, but
it's hard to not be looked at as if you're crazy in that context.
They would literally wear robes. I mean, they look exactly like the hippies from the 60s and 70s, but they were nice people. I did some drawing work. I did they were trying to turn a home into a church, and I did the drawings for it, but they were pretty cool. They were cool people. They were all very peaceful. very calm people. It's almost like they made an extra effort to be calm and collective. And
What type of people are we talking here?
This is my
the
bug catching net.
Baha'i faith.
Baha'i.
Baha'i. What's it? How does it spell?
I think it's Baha'i. Yeah.
Baha'i. Yeah, we say Baha'i in Tennessee.
Yeah, this is my oh, look, my dog chewed it up. This is my bug catching net. Just to remind that. I saw a neuroscientist use this one time in the middle of one of his podcasts to fly. I was like, wow, that's pretty humble, bro.
I was thinking when you're talking about moths, so I was going to say, to be fair, butterflies don't have, death skulls on the back of their heads like some moths do. Have you ever seen the moths that have like a skull on the back of their, so that when you're looking, a bird's looking down at it?
That's real?
Yeah. No, I've seen them before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder what's the evolutionary advantage to that?
Scaring birds away? I don't know. Bats.
I mean, it's not, you can't get food out of a skull. Yeah. There's one moth that's, or it might be a moth, might be a butterfly.
Well, maybe it's just a scary face. It looks like maybe it's just a scary, it has eyes, and a
right.
weird,
yeah. The eyes play a big role in evolution as well. There's butterfly that have snakes for wings. They look like snakes like this, like stacked on top of each other. It looks very real. And there's another one that's just been discovered very recently where it's two flies eating some poop. And it's like a fly on each wing. And it's like, yeah, so there's no reason that another insect would go to that location. Just so crazy.
There has to be some design there, right? Why would evolution go to that much trouble?
Well, I mean, it's trial and error, and so you get reproduction every few weeks. Or some of these insects only live to like a couple days, and so that genetic imprint it comes much faster, and it comes much more.
That is funny though, to think about. That means the fly had to evolve before the butterfly, because how would it know what a fly looks like?
Yeah, and that would make sense because flies are a simpler organism or a different type of organism.
So that's interesting, right? So the human has like this life scale. Let's just say it's 80, 100 years, something like that. So if we reproduce every 80 to 100 years or 20 years, we have a longer gestation cycle than a bug, right? You have to be 18 or you have to be a certain age before you can reproduce physically, right? And so on and so on and so on. And so for us, it's like, let's just say every 20 years, a new generation comes up. How long does evolution take to occur in relationship to, let's say, a bug, in relationship to a single-celled organism? So we're looking down now in our ability to perceive these different beings evolving. When we think we're at the top of this food chain, right? But now let's just say that we are a butterfly and something is looking down upon us and we're evolving. And I guess the question is, does the caterpillar realize that it turns into a butterfly? And do caterpillars ever even interact with butterflies? Is a question.
It's a good question. Michael Levin does work on this, where the caterpillar, after it goes through its transformation, it actually retains the memories. The butterfly remembers, and its brain becomes liquefied. And yet it still has its memory of when it was caterpillar.
But they all become butterflies at the same time, right? It's not like there's a horde of caterpillars left behind, right? They all become butterflies at the same time, pretty much, in the spring, right?
Right. I think so the memory that they have is like how to navigate problem spaces, I think is what it is. Yeah, they know how to navigate the same areas. And there's other ways that they tested the memory too. I can't remember.
Are those moths, or what are you looking at?
This is a plant that looks like hummingbirds.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, hummingbird plant. So that's one of them. Let's see if I can find this.
Those are some ugly hummingbirds, though.
Yeah,
they're all one color, and they're slow as crap too.
Let's see if I can find this. Yeah, here it is. Look at that. What?
No way.
That's insane.
Is that real?
This is a recent discovery, yeah.
A recent discovery. AI.
No, this is real. No, it's real.
Discovery on Dream Studio.
Yeah, I know we got to question those things now. But yeah, that's very
we're going to have instant click metadata. for the
This would also be
photo
very
dash.
difficult to do if you know what to look for as AI. If that makes sense, but yeah.
And there's even different types of bugs that they're right. So like, are they like chameleons? They can create
this one
the
doesn't have
bugs
the
can change color.
See, this one has the
depending.
lines, like the lines are more defined here, and then this one doesn't have it as bad, like the lines are
Oh,
bent
you know what
over.
would be cool is if they could do lightning bugs, so their wings would light up.
All right, here's my favorite one. Let's see if we can find it. Yes,
Alexei's like, I gave up a date for this.
Sorry, bro. This is definitely worth it. No, I'm just
I did. I need to rethink my choices of free will.
yeah. No, we made you stay. You had no choice.
At a certain point, got too late.
What is that thing? Are you saying that little snake head is a what?
This is the Atlas moth. Looks like two snakes.
Oh, look up the moth that has a skull on the back of its head. See if you can find it. So you can see what. Oh, that's definitely a snake looking.
Jesus.
Holy, that must be the Amazon. That must be the rainforest. The Amazon.
Yeah, probably.
Or something.
Look at that. Look at the detail. And yet it's also not that detailed. Like, see, the eye is not perfect, but it's enough to trick a predator. It almost, like, it doesn't have scales, but it kind of looks like scales, you know, like right here, maybe.
You know, it's equally as impressive. I mean, that's impressive, no question. And that's through evolution, and that caterpillar has no choice in what it's doing. But what about an octopus? Right?
Yeah.
And their intelligence level is pretty impressive.
They're incredibly intelligent.
Yeah. Look up the skull. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight until you look up the skull on the back of the moth. So you can see what I'm talking about. Maybe it's a ghost looking thing.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's not a skull.
Oh,
you found it?
Yeah, here you go.
Let me see.
Not that one. Yeah. That's pretty close.
That's one.
Yeah.
I think it was like something like that's what I saw. There was one that's even worse than it's right there. Right there it is. Oh man. No, go up. The gray one. Or is that fake? Go up at the top row. Is that fake? Huh?
That's real.
Oh, you're saying the gray one was fake.
That one's real. Damn. It's really good.
Yeah. So
wow. That's sweet.
Didn't insects evolve before humans though? How did they know to evolve with a human skull on the back of their if they evolved first?
Well, it may not be a human skull.
I'm just trying to be controversial. That's all.
Yeah, it's definitely not a human skull.
You know, the Earth's only 6,000 years old, so I'm just kidding.
That's so much in such little time. Look at this guy. That's definitely fake.
Wait, how much cash back?
Oh yeah, here's another one. This is real.
Cashback.
4.6 to 4.9%.
It's a good deal. Ooh, there's your octopus moth. What was that?
This is a caterpillar.
Well, that and a chameleon, right? Chameleons also do that kind of thing. But octopus are definitely.
That's a moth.
That's a caterpillar.
Oh, caterpillar. Yeah, I can say I wouldn't mess with that thing.
Look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be like.
It only has like 6 legs too. That's crazy. Or I guess those are legs too on its butt.
This little tail.
What type of moth does that turn into?
I don't know.
A man-eating moth.
The pink underwing moth. Oh, I think I know what that is. I think this turns into something beautiful. Let's find out. I love doing this stuff.
I'll be up all night looking at moth pictures.
Yes, it is what I thought. Dude, this is a beautiful moth. This is one of the most beautiful moths in the world.
Wow. It's even got the mane.
Hi, guys.
It's kind of cute but scary at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I saw one of these recently. Have you all seen a Luna moth? Tony, you probably seen them out at your place.
Yeah, they get. Oh yeah, those are the ones that are scary. You think they're bats? They get real big.
Yeah, they're huge, and they like
they're
glow in
big.
the dark.
They're like as big as your hand. The ones I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw one of those a few nights ago when I was walking around.
Yeah,
Freaking
see
awesome.
how they had one in the hand.
Yeah, they're getting
Yeah.
much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, here you go. That's a good size
There
one.
you go. Yeah, they'll scare you too when they're flying around at night. If like sometimes my floodlight will come on, with just a little motion, and I'll have to walk out to my truck or something, and you get like dive bombed by a big moth like that. You think it's like you're like George Knapp was right, man. They've arrived.
Yeah, they get pretty huge. Do they glow in the dark? I think they have some kind of luminescence.
I'm always hitting the dirt trying to escape them. I don't ever. I don't think they're that luminous. Like I don't remember.
They're not bioluminescent.
Again, a lot of times I just see their shadow. It's like you're seeing like they're coming in from behind you or something, and you'll see the reflection on you'll see a shadow, and the shadow's like 2 foot big. You're thinking, oh my god.
All right, let me see if I can pull this up. We're talking about octopus intelligence. I have an image saved from the movie My Octopus Teacher, and it's there's a scene where the octopus is like 6 or 7 months old, and it outsmarts a shark by riding on its back. Here it is. Let me see if I can pull this up. I got a screenshot of it and saved it as a background.
Don't they all have that little beak? I've always wondered how dangerous they are. Because don't they have a little beak that they can poke you with?
Yeah, that's their mouth, is like basically a parrot beak. So this is the octopus riding on the back of a shark, and the shark is none the wiser. And then the shark goes under a little alcove or whatever where the octopus can latch on, and the octopus just catches onto that rock and then just brushes itself off, and the shark just keeps going.
That's not your typical shark either.
And so you see, it's are they lemon sharks? I forget. But so the octopus's main mode of defense is to use shells. Like this is what you see here. Or sorry, this is what you see on this part right here and these objects. It just creates a sphere of shells around itself to cover its entire body. But some sharks have figured that out. So this shark tried to attack the octopus, and it just does this ninja maneuver and just holds onto its back. And the shark's like, what? Okay. It's like 6 months old, and you're learning that. Like, I mean, when we're 6 months old, we don't sometimes even know how to walk. So it's like the acceleration of intelligence is just incredibly vast, and maybe it's the distributed brain throughout each.
You just touched on something I like a lot, is how many people fully develop their instinctual knowledge when they're born into these different cultures.
Well, I imagine there was
a domesticated wild boar versus one that's living in flight or fight mode. Like, you go through different experiences, and if you're born into domestication, you necessarily don't develop your senses.
I mean, octopi had to evolve quicker as far as defensive mechanisms, right? Because I'm sure they're one of the tastiest treats in the ocean.
Yeah.
So they're probably sought after pretty heavily for food source.
And they have the camouflage. So they have the type of camouflage that it's not just like the color of their skin, but they have special musculature on the integumentary system, which is just like skin, and they can raise parts of their skin to imitate the actual texture of like coral and whatever they're trying to imitate.
Yeah, it looks like a mollusk, like on the back of it there, like half of a clam or something, you know?
When I first saw this picture, I thought it was mimicking the shells, because I've seen them do that kind of stuff before. Not shells, but like you're saying, change shape along with color.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then so octopi have the regular suckers, and then squids have the suckers that have teeth on them, or like little barbs.
Yeah,
I think
those are the scary ones. You don't want to get latched onto one of those things.
The giant squid. And there's the ghost squid that has like crazy long appendages. It's a recent discovery too.
You mean past their legs?
I think it's called, yeah.
Oh, you're saying squid. The squid are the ones that are shaped
Yeah.
like a torpedo or whatever.
Let me try this. I'm just sharing so much here.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, yeah. Ta-da. Yeah, this is the ghost squid. Super weird.
That looks like deep sea, deep ocean stuff.
Yep. Yeah, this is a recent footage. Like we've known these exist because we found one dead, washed up, I think. We recently got some actual live footage of them. I think it was beginning of last year. Yeah, here it is. It's the beginning of last year. Just super long arms, like 30 feet or something. Maybe it'll play here.
There's your alien.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that it's like it has tendrils, and then it uses those tendrils to catch whatever it catches.
You would almost think it was a different species than a squid.
Yeah, it's very different. Because like really this is its arms. Like it's only these parts right here are what it can move. The rest of this are like tendrils.
Almost like a jellyfish.
Yeah, super weird.
I guess it can collect food on those tendrils or whatever.
They have microscopic suckers on their arms. All right, I shouldn't use too much of this. You're gonna get flagged. Yeah.
Oh well. That'll take 10 cents off my monthly revenue. Well, guys, Alexei, sorry. Maybe you can still. I bet she'd still meet you there if you called her.
No, it's okay.
I feel bad. But that was a great. It was a great conversation. I'm glad we got to where we did. I love the AI discussion because one of the points I was trying to make the other day was that I was going to be happy when we reached a certain level. Where it was almost like my encyclopedia, where I could have my encyclopedia back on my shelf. I could have my own personal AI.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge change. Things are about to be very, very different.
So what they should do, I just invented something. This is going to be my patent on the file tomorrow. So you have like little cassette tapes on your bookshelf, right? AI is going to be so hard drive laden that there'll be categories of like science, thumb drives, plumbing, electrical. You'll have an AI for every category, just so you can afford to, or so your computer will be able to run it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, look into what Microsoft is doing with their NPUs. That's all going to be on one system now.
Those computers are like $15,000 though. Are you talking about like the ones that have like the AMD 100 or whatever, and they have an NPU that's like, I don't know, 60 gigabyte or something, or no, terabyte.
There's one. They're just coming out with it where it's built in, like Copilot's built into the computer, and it navigates your entire computer.
You're talking about the computers where you can do your own transforming, your own training, right?
Yeah, so you can do it in different ways. You can do it all on the system from your home base, or you can use the servers that they have available. Apparently.
Better not get going down that rabbit hole again. Alexei will never get to this date. I said, if we start going down that rabbit hole again, Alexei will never get to his date.
No, it's the time has passed, man, at this point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks for the show. It was a lot of fun. I was really just wanting to get back together with you guys. I missed you guys.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a while.
And thanks to everyone in the chat, in the audience. I appreciate you guys. And we will see you next. You all have any closing thoughts, or are you ready to play the outro?
Be good to each other. Be kind to yourself and everyone else.
Good one.
What you are about to see is a real-life story. The accounts have gone into great detail to give each side's version of this an exclusive one, we understand. One of the most talked about